Live from the historic virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway, we say good afternoon, race fans, and welcome to an iRacing special event. This is the North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup. We're happy that you're with us at RaceSpotTV. Evan Pasoko alongside our Junior Concupati qualified, just wrapping up. Let's go trackside and take a look at your starting grid as we get set to go racing for 400 laps this afternoon. Blake McCandless, best of them all, will lead us to the green flag with an 18.694 on the top spot alongside Philip Snipes in second. Tanner McCullough, Jaden Hop going to double up on road 2. They'll start in third and fourth with Brett Hahn and Ethan McNichol in sixth. Sam White will start from seventh alongside with Tom Abromaitis in eighth position. Alex Crasper is ninth, and Christopher Allen, our junior, rounds out our top 10.
Top 10, yep, and then 11th and 12th, row 6, excuse me. Joe Yates, Richard Tam, exciting row there. One of my team owners, Timu Toika for Simsa Esports, he's back in 13th position alongside Damon Mays on row 7. John Theodore, the Twitch streamer, he's back in 15th with Michael Dix rounding out row 8. Jordan Fruin 17th, and then Jacob Blankenship in 18th, Evan.
And continuing on through the final time in qualifying, it belongs to Trey Brannon. So a handful of provisionals to Cody Dutton in 20th, and then Sean Kimball, Trevor McManus, Charles Wimbley, Devin Fontaine, and Billy Shea going to be your 25 cars ready to go racing. This is the top split if you want to get in on Throwback Cup action. Several more splits going to be going across the weekend here on the iRacing service. But these are the big guns in split number 1, race number 1 of the weekend. And our junior, quite a challenge on deck for these drivers tonight at the North Wilkesboro Speedway. We are in the 1987 NASCAR Chevys and Fords, and this is a full-length 400-mile race that is guaranteed to be a bout of attrition.
Yeah, not just attrition, but open setup as well. And there's no open setup competition for this on the official iRacing service, Evan. So very much a challenge, and I'm looking forward to this. This was an era where a driver was king. What can these drivers do in what should be a very challenging 400 laps?
And no surprise, you already referenced going through the starting grid at some of the big names in this one. Certainly a lot of drivers excited to get out here in these 87 cars and have a lot of fun at, I think, one of the coolest tracks that we have here on the iRacing service of the 1987 remake of this North Wilkesboro Speedway, scanned recently just last year to join the service. The iRacing official pace truck and a dive to the safety of the pit lane. The field is in the hands of Blake McCandless. Let's go throwback racing at North Wilkesboro. Well, you can see how quickly these laps are going to tick off here, but 400 times around is no short one, and McCandless from pole position opens up an early race lead. However, it was issues for Philip Snipes off of the get-go. The 9 started this race second. He quickly falls to P4.
Yeah, it's been an interesting opening laps here, Evan, as the cars kind of single file themselves out. It was too wide at the start, and now you have to go all the way back to the edge of the top 10. There you can see it's Tom Abromaitis with Timu Toika on the edge of the top 10. Joe Yates, Richard Tan, they've slipped out. So interesting fights here, but very much drivers can't afford to get too feisty right now, Evan, because, again, 400 laps. We are expecting cautions to be a very key thing, and you can see as the leaders are now very much scampering away. Second place now, side by side.
And this is their real first look to see what these other drivers have, right? You were talking about the fact that it was open setups and whatnot. So these guys really don't know what to expect on a long run race. And of course, with it being a track that's just 0.63 miles in length, It's a decent chance that a majority of the field's going to end up off of the lead lap by the time this one's done. Obviously, that would be aided by more green flag racing as the battle for second heats up once more. That's the number 4 of Tanner McCullough trying to hang on to the number 2 spot, but the 3 car of Brett Hahn on the bottom trying to make some moves in that Air Force Chevrolet.
Yeah, right now, though, McCulloch and the old blue machine very much content to ride that outside line. The iRacing employee as well. I think now, though, Hahn might have a bit of a run, but all of this is just helping out McCandless out front. 1 second clear, Evan. No pressure to speak of. He can save his tires, save his machine as well. And you can see just how close that Ford machine is getting up to that outside wall.
And it's such a unique track for those who know not only the story and the history of North Wilkesboro, but as well the racing surface itself, right? As we ride on board here about 5th back in line and look at that battle for second, actually hold that point for the moment. There is a huge pile up in turn number 4, and that is the 22 of Trevor McManus blocking the road. Something happened back in traffic, and it took out a handful of cars.
Let's go take a look at the RaceSpotTV replay. I believe it was Blankenship in that number 19, Evan, up on that outside. I think it might be something in front of him. Oh, it's the 22 that's around and really nowhere he could go.
I think the 22 ended up getting some help in that, and you're right, with Blankenship there, just absolutely nowhere for him to go. Let's watch this 22 of McManus. He was 20th at the time, riding in line in 3 and 4, and right there, the 18 just drove through that left rear quarter panel. That was Sean Kimball, maybe trying to get underneath him off of the corner. Instead, touched him. The 18 drove on through, but when the 22 spun around, he collected 4 other cars.
Yeah, that was a big one, and now we'll see if anyone comes down onto pit road there. Doesn't look like any of the leaders, but Charles Wimbley, Jacob Blankenship, so a couple of the cars that did get involved, Evan, trying to get some repairs.
And that's going to be critical, right? In a shorter race, I think you may value the track position over the damage repairs, right? You're going to be like, hey, it's not worth going all the way to the back of the field. It's a 25-car field, not the biggest we've ever seen, not the smallest, but I think because this race is so long and the fact that this could break out into a green flag run kind of at any moment, you do not want to sit and stay with a damaged race car. So as long as you can maintain your lead lap status, so come down to the pit lane, try to get damage fixed, but when that pace truck in the field rolls off of 4, you have to get going within those parameters, get it fixed as quickly as possible, get back on track. I would sacrifice the track position in exchange for a clean race car, because I don't want to say I'll get it fixed on the next caution flag and then we go green for 300 plus laps, are genius. So I think that's why these guys at the back are going to get this damage fixed ASAP, and I think that's going to be a theme early in this race. Unless it's really, really torn up, get that damage fixed if at all possible.
Yeah, and you see Wimbley down 1 lap. He's rolling, but it does look like for McManus, potentially some more significant damage, not the way that you want to start off. What is an interesting race here, Evan? We didn't really get much of a chance to talk about it because a rather quick intro, unfortunately, but this is our iRacing special event schedule, the first of our oval races since we're at the high banks of Daytona, so great to now be in something slightly different. These 87 cars, very much a different machine, and we get to see some new drivers as well taking to the tracks.
Yeah, you know, these are big, heavy, old stock cars, right? The Chevy Monte Carlos, the Ford Thunderbird, 650 horsepower, 358 cubic inch V8s, nearly 4,000 pounds. They are big and heavy, but they are bad, right? I mean, they are a staple, I think, of stock car history, and no surprise that when iRacing scanned North Wilkesboro and decided to restore it to 1987, that matched up perfectly with the release of these 1987 stock cars. You can see the track map. What you don't see there is the elevation change. It is downhill from turn 4 to 1, and on the back straightaway uphill from 2 to 3. That's a big factor, as 14 laps are in the books, and on a single file restart, McCandless gets us back underway.
Yeah, very good jump for him. Already 4/10 clear. Back for about, I think, 7th position. You can see Sam Krasper, excuse me. Then Timu Toika, who's already up 5 positions. One of our biggest movers here, Evan. Kind of expect that we'll see more of that later in this race, as you can already see behind. There is Toika trying to take advantage of some of the melee going on in front. I do think that this is one race where throughout the entirety of 400 laps, different names will find their opportunities to shine, especially with that open setup being so key.
A nice Terry Labonte paint scheme as well on that 2 of Toyka as he'll make another pass for position, and just behind them, that's the 80 car making some moves. Cody Dutton started this race in 20th position. He is already up to position number 10, so an early big mover in this race, and not yet satisfied. He'll go to the inside of Ethan McNichol and try to get 9th away, and that's 2 spots off for the restart. Dutton is on the move early.
And it just goes back to what I was saying a moment ago, Evan. He has a very, very good short run car, but if we go long here, what does that mean for him? Do some of these other cars that have struggled early in the run, for example, McNeil is down 4 on this early portion of the race. Is he going to start coming good? And I'm very curious how we'll have various swings over the course of a very interesting race here.
Well, it's certain to happen at some point, right? I mean, you are going to have incidents, but there is no way we do a 400-lap race here at North Wilkesboro without at least 100-lap green flag run is going to be my hot take for the afternoon, right? I think that it is going to be a race where you do need to settle in at some point, but off of these restarts, these drivers want everything that can get you on board, or you were on board there with a moment for Toyka, trying to get up to Sam White in the number 6 spot, Alex Crasper, Cody Dutton, all in the mix. It's allowed the top 5 or 4 to pull away just a little bit, and you've got some packs kind of mid-pack or so.
Yeah, now the gap out front, not as big as what we saw the first time around, but unlike the battle that we saw for second position, the car of Brett Hahn is very much content to just ride around in third, and so that's why we're seeing a lot more of this movement further back. Toyka now goes down a position, I think that was, as Sam White, unable to get around the outside, but I am starting to see, Evan, the outside becoming more of a factor. Cody Dutton, though, has the fastest car on the racetrack as we go 3 wide down the back straightaway.
Yeah, why not, right? 378 laps to go. Let's go 3 wide on the back straightaway, and Toyka wins out in that exchange. That high line makes him the winner, and the 2 car moves up to position number 6. And granted, there are some drivers mid-pack that were able to get some spots because of that incident, right? That's not the case for the likes of Toyka, for the likes of the 8 machine of Cody Dutton here as well. These drivers are just making these passes under green flag conditions, and you can see kind of mid-pack here, the battle for 12th position is in full swing. Ethan McNichol in front of the field, but that's Damon Mays in the white and blue number 13 Intel Chevy. He is on the move, looking to the inside in 3, and he'll go side by side for that spot.
I think Theodore will try and slip his nose to the inside as well, unable to do so as we cross the start-finish line. Already 25 laps into this one. Oh, Richard Tam as well tries to slip around the outside there. This is one track, Evan, where I think people think short track racing just ride around on the bottom. Not true at all, and you'll see cars ripping that high line, finding a lot of speed.
And that's where that elevation change on the front and the back straightaway does come into play, right? You can get away a little bit with not as good of a run off of forward because you're going to have all that downhill momentum working with you into one. It also means that you are going to have to get on the brakes a little bit sooner and a little bit harder than what you'll do when you go up the back straightaway. And that's where momentum at a turn number 2, which may be the key point on this track, is. But, you know, we saw that move to the inside in 3 and 4 by Mays to get that position, and you know, now the 7 Machida, John Theodore, wants to have a look as well. Ethan McNichol continues to fall after starting this race in P6. And right here, good example, Theodore to the inside. That bottom is much more open or accessible in 3 and 4 here than it is in 1 and 2. And that's 2 passes in a row for P12 where they use the inside line down at that far end of the racetrack.
I'm sure you can find a pretty interesting onboard view on John Theodore's Twitch channel as well at this point, because he is a Twitch streamer, and I'm sure he's enjoying this type of a race. It's, again, something slightly different, right, Evan? A lot of these drivers, the week in, week out, is the more modern generation of these Cup cars. The open setup, I think it challenges people to try something different. Look at this side-by-side action, though, that we're seeing further back in your pack. It is starting to be intensified further up. I think it's Toyka and Alex Crasper who was side-by-side for a second. They've kind of pulled away from Sam White and Tom Abromaitis for the 10th position right now.
Yeah, and these separations are going to grow, right? And it's going to be interesting to see some 30 or so laps now into this race, right? What happens when we do get to a long run? And a lot of racetracks, some of the bigger intermediate tracks in Atlanta, Charlotte, you know, when you talk about some of the tracks that have been around for a long time that these 87 cars ran at, granted, in many cases in slightly different configurations than how they look today in modern times, but 30 laps into a run, normally you're thinking, all right, we're kind of halfway through. This is where we start to transition short run to long run. There is a long way to go on fuel, and I'm wondering if these drivers who are dropping back now, the likes of all these cars in this battle, as you see another look down to the inside as Joey Yates wants to try again on Sam White. He'll make the pass and take over position number 10. Are they saving? Are they going to make up the time they're losing now? Or you talk about how critical that open setup element is to this special event. Do they just not have a car that can contend with the McCandlesses and the McCulloughs of the world, who in first and second have pulled away from everybody else? McCandless was about 8/10 or so Virginia in front of the field before the first caution, but Tanner McCullough has kind of kept him honest much more this run. There's the difference between first and second. It's about 4 car lengths off of turn 4.
And you know what's going to be the name of the game very shortly, Evan? Lap traffic. You can already see the gap to some of the cars at the tail end of the lead lap is down to 10ths of a second now. And as soon as McCandless starts working his way through the field, that's when the opportunity, might start to present itself for McCullough. Very interested to see how they work their way through this lap traffic, who is, give or take, about 2 or 3 tenths a second per lap slower at this point in time.
And some of the best cars on track, in fact, are kind of the mid-pack drivers. In fact, it was Toyka in 8th who was the fastest car on track. So that means that your leaders are being slowed down by this traffic, as McCandless is able to get on by Charles Wimbley, who will follow a lap down. And as you ride on board with McCullough, a lot of counter steer on that number 4 as it got way loose in the center of 1 and 2, but it is enough to clear that number 3 machine to behind, and Wimbley becomes the first driver to fall several laps down just on pace. You know, we talked about the issues with Trevor McManus earlier. The number 22 Hooters entry was in that wreck in turn 4. He's back on track, but 11 laps down in P25.
And look at the contrast at this point, Evan, between a modern NASCAR, Xfinity or even Cup car versus this kind of behemoth that these drivers are struggling to maintain around the track. So much counter steer from McCullough, and I'm sure they're being very nervous on the throttle as well, almost reminiscent of the Cup cars on the dirt just a couple of weeks ago. More lap traffic though, and McCandless able to deal with it with not too much difficulty.
Yeah, these things float a lot, right? It almost feels like there's a huge dead space in the wheel, whereas in a modern day NASCAR stock car, they're pretty precise, and you're going to be right on that limit, right? If the car is loose, you're going to be using throttle to turn it. If the car is tight, you're going to be kind of sliding it right up to the outside wall. These things float a lot, and it allows you to play with the throttle a little bit more. It allows you to play with the wheel a little bit more to try to make up for all of that gray area, and it also means that you are pushing the car if you want to be fast. If you want it to stick to the ground, you're going to be about 10 miles an hour off pace. So that's one of the things I think that makes these 87 cars so endearing, is they are tough to drive. And believe it or not, some of these guys actually prefer cars that are a little bit tougher to drive, right? They enjoy that challenge as we pick up this battle for 4th position. Jaden Hopp has pulled away just a tad, and now Brett Hahn is trying to hold on, but here comes Alex Crasper trying to get to the inside of Philip Snipes.
I think hang on is the word. Hahn has slipped away from the leading battle. By the way, Cody Dutton, we were talking about his charge up through the field, Evan. 17 positions gained. He's up into the podium positions right now, hunting down our leading pair. Through lap traffic, it definitely looks as though Cody Dutton might have the fastest car in today's race.
And he is going to be somebody who enjoys long runs, right? I've seen the fast lap trade off the last couple of laps. One time it's Toyka, one time it's Hop, one time it's Dutton. So all these mid-pack cars, despite the fact, I mean, not even mid-pack, right? Kind of mid-top 10 cars, but despite the fact that your leaders have pulled away a little bit, this race is far from over. with 3:56 left on the scoring pylon this time through. That's another one of the drivers that has been in a fight basically all night long is Dutton, and it hasn't hindered him. Thought maybe that working so hard to get through the field. Remember, he did not take a time in qualifying. We had the top 19 drivers qualify. Dutton did not, and based on iRating, he was seeded as the highest of the non-qualifiers for 20th on the grid. He's driven his way from 20th to 3rd. Certainly very impressive for him to be able to get through the field like that with traffic. Can only imagine what it would have been like if he had started up front. The difference between he and the race leaders, just over 3 seconds, as he's got some lap traffic of his own to deal with.
Yeah, he was very sideways a few moments ago as we're approaching lap 50 of this race. The laps really do tick on by, Evan. Lap time still for your race leader at 25.39, so drop off of about 1.3 seconds, but still not very slow by any means. And as you see, that lap traffic very close to the rear bumper of Dutton. He's actually fallen off the back of the race leaders very slightly. And as you can see on the bottom right portion of your screen, McCulloch has actually been struggling in traffic. So McCandless has opened up a bit of a gap, 1.4 seconds between your race leaders.
Just when we thought that McCulloch had kind of had him, right? Went to 0.4 of a second or so off for the restart. McCulloch brought it back down to 2 or so, and now McCandless has righted the ship. And look at the battle back here in 13th position. This is only about 6 seconds ahead of race leader Blake McCandless, where they're soon going to be at risk of losing their lap. I said it at the top. We're only, what, 1/8 of the way through this one now as we put lap number 50 behind us. There are going to be very few cars left on the lead lap in this race when it ends. And all of these drivers know they don't want to be the first one to get caught by the leader, right? Their faith basically is going to be that there's going to be yellow flags, enough of which are junior to keep them on the lead lap, right? There is a lot of talent in this field. The margins between cars are not huge, but the margins are big enough that we cannot run 400 laps or so without cautions and everybody stay on the lead lap at a racetrack that's just over a half mile, right? They're going to be multiple laps down. So some of these drivers realize that. They've accepted that, and they're thinking, listen, we need some timely yellows. We just need to stay on the lead lap or stay within touch of the lead lap. Is way out of shape there was the 10 of Jordan Froen in front up in the number 15 spot, the Hot Wheels entry. They're just trying to get yellows, keep the car in one piece, maybe get a little bit lucky later on. That is really, for a majority of the field, their only hope at getting a race win, because the guys like McCandless, McCulloch, and Dutton are going to be very hard to beat straight up. And there's another big slide and all the way around, and a yellow at lap 53, just as I mentioned it.
Commentator's curse there. I'm putting that one on you, Evan. You were talking about
I didn't knock on wood, so that was my fault.
You were talking about how some of these cars needed the caution. Unfortunately for Richard Tam, he will now drop 1 lap down and unfortunately won't get that back. I do wonder if now we'll start seeing some cars down onto pit road. But let's go take a look at the RaceSpotTV replay, Evan.
And unlike the first incident where the car who spun got turned, this is the opposite. I think this is Tam. Remember how I mentioned he needed more brake downhill into 1? I think he just drove it a little bit too deep, didn't want to go through the 15, so he mashed the brakes a little bit, and it locked up the front end of that car, spun it around all on his own. Here's the onboard.
Take a look here. Oh, just too much speed.
Oh, slide.
And too much speed as well on entry, and I think that kind of set the events in action, and you can see here, very patient to not rejoin unsafely, which Evan, sometimes can be a big issue. So he didn't cause a further issue for some of our leaders. Back to live pictures though, and just like I suspected, pit road, a very busy place.
And of course, without the ability for drivers to get lead laps back or laps back as easy as you do in modern day rules, a lot of those lapped cars are going to stay out under this caution while your race leaders pit to get laps back. But first off of pit road with 4 tires will be Blake McCandless, so he looks like he will defend the top spot in this one. I did see Sam White come out before. An interesting strategy call as the 15 machine, I believe, pitted on a closed pit So that was not for position. Just keep that in mind. And now we'll see Mays, Allen, Dixon, Kimball come down pit road. So everything will cycle back through, and a pretty unanimous decision for tires and fuel.
I'm not even sure, Evan. We, like I said, very, very quick intro. I'm not even sure if the drivers have a limited tire set for today's race, but we are now an eighth of the way in. I do wonder if it's maybe one of the allocations that drivers had thought they would use at this point in time. You can see Richard Tam, one of the cars, racing off of pit road, trying to beat the pace truck as well. At this point in time, 25 starters, Evan, 20 cars still on the lead lap.
And that's not bad, right, for being 58 laps into this race. And that was a healthy green flag run, but that was about the point where the leaders were going to catch the bulk of the field, right? They get the guys in the low 20s and the high teens, but when you get to like 16th or 17th, that's where the cars are much closer together, and McCandless was about to get there. So these drivers know, if I'm a mid-pack car, I've got about 50 laps before those leaders get to me. So if we average cautions every 50 laps or so, they have an opportunity to stay on the lead lap in this one. But that's kind of a good mile marker to keep in the back of our minds as we look forward to some of the other runs tonight, to see how long it does take your leaders to catch up to traffic. Lights out on top of the pace car, so all the drivers who stayed out going to get waved on through to clear. McCandless will go to the control position to put lap number 59 behind us.
Should be an interesting restart here. What can McCullough do trying to get the jump, Evan? Might be one of his few opportunities. Watch for Dutton as well to be very strong.
And McCandless so good. They go to the outside because on single file restart procedures, you cannot pass on the bottom, but you can once we're underway. And here's the challenge by Cody Dutton. Caution behind. Dutton will get second, but something happened towards the rear of the field with Sean Kimball.
Not sure exactly who it's with, but he was in about the 14th spot. Let's take a look at another one of these RaceSpotTV replays, Evan. Hopefully we don't start getting down one of those rabbit holes. And, ooh, it's a solo car incident. Once more, too much speed. And just unlucky, Evan, that the automated iRacing race control system threw out the caution there.
Yeah, that's one I think in the real world you may have been able to get away with, especially because he was on his own. And it's a tough break for Kimball because notice how he's all on his own, right? That was one of the drivers who declined to come down pit road. He decided to get track position, get a wave around, and obviously on old tires, they got a little bit cold there under caution flag conditions, drove it into 1 and 2 like he was doing at the end of the last run, and it just did not stick. So Kimball will decide to come to pit road this time through and should be able to maintain his lead lap position. But this is the big story, Cody Dutton. Remember, it was McCullough chasing McCandless on the last run, but Cody Dutton from 20th on the grid makes the pass for second just in time for the yellow flag to come out. So he will be lined up behind the 1 car for the next restart.
I'd be scared if I'm McCandless, to be completely honest here, Evan. That 8 car behind is without a doubt being the quickest car on track, up 18 positions so far. Wonder how long it's going to take him to get the move done. It was a very impressive jump from Dutton on that last restart. If he can do the same here, Evan, might be side by side once more across the start-finish line.
It would not surprise me at all. And again, I was just mentioning that restart procedure where these drivers ride the fence. You might say, well, they're leaving the inside open, right? But per iRacing restart procedures, you can pass on the outside on a single file restart. You could not pass on the inside. So that is why these drivers basically go up to the fence to block anybody from trying to get a running start or any funny business on the restarts. And of course, McCandless, as the control car, has the opportunity to restart this race any time between when that pace truck hits pit road and when the green flag actually comes out. It's not a huge window here like it is at some other tracks, but it is enough that I think if McCandless can get the jump on Dutton, get that run down the hill to turn 1, he'll be fine off for the restart. But I totally agree with you that if I'm McCandless, the one guy I don't want to see into my mirror is Cody Dutton, because he is a miraculous now plus 18 spots, and he's done it, I don't want to say with ease, but doesn't look like he's been challenged all that much. So this could be a titanium battle between the 66 and the 80.
It seems like the biggest challenge that Dutton has is wrestling that machine around this track. It's got so much power, so little control at times. I think on this restart, he's going to be going guns blazing to try and get past Evan. Pace truck about to pull down. This should be a fun one.
And we'll see how this one plays through. 65 laps down from North Wilkesboro. It is another good jump for the 66. No, here comes Dutton. McCandless fired off well, but got onto the brakes really early, and Cody Dutton drove it in. He'll look to the inside, side by side for the race lead in 3 and 4.
Dutton's going to try and get the lead across the line. On the outside, though, momentum to McCandless, but he's unable to hold off the challenge, Evan. Down into turn 1, Dutton still trying to get close enough, but he can't roll that onto the power as aggressively as he wants. McCandless back into the lead.
The inside just not working for Dutton. He's gotten right alongside McCandless several times. He does it again off of 4. They touch. That 80 will not stay stuck to the racetrack on the bottom. It is very loose, and it caused him to walk up the hill just a little bit and get into the door of Blake McCandless that last lap.
Really close, and you saw the aggressiveness on the start to launch it down into turn 1, Evan. I think through lap traffic, watch for Dutton to set that up once more. I think we might be in for a little bit of a holding period now, though, as once more we settle into that run where the next 40, 50 laps, we wait for the leaders to catch lap traffic.
And that's where McCandless needs to improve, right? That's where he lost time to McCullough last time through, and I think he's very fortunate to get away with this one ahead of Cody Dutton. I think it certainly could have been the 80 car to the race lead, and at that point, who knows if he was just going to run away and check out. Meanwhile, in the pack, a different story is plenty of action going on. Damon Mays in the mix, Joe Yakes, along with, I think that's as well, Michael Dix up top at the number 21 A&W car. So three-way bout here for 10th position on back. All these drivers have picked up a few, trying to crack the top 10.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, but is Joe Yakes a name that we're familiar with on a Monday night?
I would agree that assuming there's not multiple Joe Yakes, I think that is our Joe Yakes from our RSR coverage, and that's not what he wants to do, though. Put it in the fence at a turn number 2, and I think the 21 of Michael Dix caught a piece of him. These cars will look rough after 400 laps, and listen, they don't build them like they used to is the saying, right? These cars can take a hit and keep on ticking, but you don't want to do that more times than you need to, and I wonder if it's going to hurt Yakes because Dix is looking to the inside as you're looking off of the back bumper of the 87.
Hey, you talk about the damage. Already look at the front clip on that number 21. Oh, almost makes contact once more. Comparatively, though, Damon Mays did lose a lot of momentum through that incident, Evan, but no damage to the front. Wonder how that's going to treat his car come the end of this race as the 21 car back down to the inside.
And it's just hard to get the run off the corner when you work on that inside, right? I mean, Yakes has found a pretty defensive line. He's not pinching the 21 car down. He's giving him space, but oftentimes that middle line, you see the sets of white hash marks, right? In 3 and 4, you go all the way below the bottom one. You're on the inside, but right here, look at the race leaders. They're about a lane up off the bottom as Cody Dutton wants to try again. This time, lap number 76. He has got the fire off of the corner, and he is looking for the race lead.
And much more aggressive in terms of getting the power down on exit, almost coming up into the line of McCandless, and this is forcing the former race leader to have to try and respond here, Evan. For the first time, I think Dutton might get this done out of turn 4.
Half a car length advantage, full car length. Does he pull up in front? New race leader at lap number 78. First time anybody but Blake McCandless has led a lap. It is Cody Dutton to the lead and a spin on the back straightaway for Billy Shea, and it will cause a yellow.
I think, you know, if he had just reset back down onto pit road, Evan, we would have stayed green because somehow the iRacing safety car man had not thrown out the caution, but RaceSpotTV replay to go take a look at him once more. That's a car just getting onto the power a little bit too aggressively out of the corner.
It's very harmless, but right there when he backs it up, he backs up onto the racing surface. I told you there's so much dead space that these cars can kind of break loose at any point. You kind of want it to. He's fine there, but right there, once he backs it up and onto the racing surface, that's basically a stopped car on track, and that's going to trigger the automatic yellow 9 times out of 10 here on the service. Could have escaped out to the pit lane, could have also just straightened the car in the grass. I think he may have gotten away with it, but it does trigger a yellow. And a split call, the 80 car who just took the lead decides to come down pit road for service. Blake McCandless does not, Arjuna, so 1 and 2 split on the pit strategy.
I wonder if this is just a track position play from McCandless where he was going to just go opposite to whatever Cody Dutton did. Interesting call there from Dutton. He cycles his way back down into 16th position, Evan. He's got a lot of work to do, but fresh tires. Again, I'm going to go back to the point that I made slightly earlier, Evan. Not sure if there is a tire set limit in effect. I wonder if maybe that's on the mind of some of these cars that did not come down onto pit road, because we only saw about 5 cars in total come down and get some tires.
And if my research didn't fail me, I believe these drivers are working with 13 sets of tires. Now that would seem to me like enough that you could almost come down pit road and get tires at any time, right? I think this race is going to have either right at or just under about 13 yellows maximum. So there's that argument that I don't think it's tires. I think it's just track position, right? More cars stayed out than cars pitted. So Cody Dutton, he's already done it once. He's going to have to do it again because he started in 20th. He's the lead car on fresh tires, but that is 14th on track. And it's kind of double the distance because we're single file restarts, right? He's not on row 7. He is 14 rows back from the race leader. So Cody Dutton, I think, is faster than all the cars in front of him, maybe with the exception of Blake up front, right? We don't know who's going to win out in the battle between those two, so I think he'd be able to get through them anyways, but the tires are certainly going to help him, but quite a difference. 5 laps ago, he was thinking he was going to run away with clean air, and now he's back in the hornet's nest.
He's done it once before, though, Evan. He's just got to sit back and do it once more. Working lap 83, so lights are off on the pace car. We will return on lap 84. We're not even a quarter of a way into this one. Still a long way to go, and for Dutton, a lot of work still to do.
And he needs to be patient. That's going to be the key as Blake McCandless back to the top of the board, takes the green flag, we're off and away. Tanner McCullough back to the number 2 spot. That's Jaden Hopp in the Holly, number 12, sits in 3rd. 4th, Brett Hahn, and 5th, a race high for Team Utoika.
Yeah, nice little jump up there through the strategy for him. He's up 8 with John Theodore behind up 9, so we are starting to see what I was saying earlier, where movers and shakers at different part of the race start to present themselves. Different lines being taken through 1 and 2 as well, as we've got side by side for Dutton, already up into 9th position here, Evan.
He is working, and again, the single file hurts him distance-wise, right? He's that much further behind the race leader, but it's not that bad because there isn't a roadblock in front. Look at him slice through the field like a hot knife through butter by the 21, by the 87. Dutton continues his charge now to 7th. Next on deck is the 7 up the road as he'll look down to the inside.
Look at the confidence that he's got. Oh, he's counter-steering, still carrying speed, still getting positions done as well. Up into 6th, looking back into the top 5. That is Toika in the 2 machine in front of him. We'll give him a lane, and Dutton will take full advantage here, Evan. This is how important fresh tires are, and a little bit of an indication what it might look like at the end of this race.
The argument could be 13 sets of tires is a lot, yes. However, they may want to save them in case we get a rash of yellows late, right? You're going to want to get fresh tires ASAP. For somebody like Cody Dutton, who's already up to P4, his last lap is already a 1/10 of a second off of what he was doing for his best laps of the race. So the fall off is pretty quick and immediate once you get 5-10 laps into a run. So that may be why drivers want to save extra sets for late. Easy pass through Jaden Hopp. Dutton's to third, and out to the inside of Tanner McCullough. McCullough was trying to fight for the lead, and now a yellow again, just as Dutton was ready to storm by the leader. We got the 18 around in 4.
Creates a very interesting strategy call here now. If you're McCandless, if you're Dutton, which approach do you take? But this is the replay for Kimball. Once more, just a self-spin. And is that the 25 car? Nowhere to go.
Yep. Just involved in that self-spin, and now this time caught up in the best of the 18. No way for him to avoid that one, as we'll see the spin up ahead. He guesses kind of middle of the road, and I don't think he really had anywhere to go. If he tried to go down, the 18 was kind of rolling down the hill that Shea just kind of got locked up there. And here's your decision. McCandless now going to bring that majority of cars who decided not to pit last time down this time through. It'll hand the race lead back to Dutton, but we saw how important the tires were, with Dutton basically going for the back to the front no more than a dozen laps. So I think McCandless is going to be in a good spot for this next run. 4 tires is probably the call for all of them. Can anybody maybe beat McCandless off pit road?
You can see the left side's going up. Ooh, there is a split call. Is that Damon Mays who's taken 2 tires? And he has. Toyka tried to maybe jump a couple of positions as well. But this will be interesting. Different kind of approach that I think McCandless will now try and take, Evan, because he's only back in 7th. A lot fewer cars for him to try and pass. The question now becomes, how worn are the tires for Cody Dutton?
And what can Damon Mays do in that blue and white number 13 Chevy on the 2 tires, right? He decided to just go for right sides only, so he will be the first car with fresh tires in 6th, and then McCandless and company 4 tires from that spot on back. We haven't really seen anybody go for the 2-stopper so far tonight. It's been yellow, 4 tires, gas it up and move on through. Normally, when tires appear to be as big of a factor here as they are so far this evening, I would think that those 4 tires are going to pretty easily win out, but I don't think Damon Mays is thinking race leader bust here on Junior. He was 15th at the time of the yellow, jumps up to position number 6, and if you would assume that everybody on fresh rubber can get past the cars on old tires, granted, they're only 12 laps old, right? It's not going to be as big of a margin, but Dutton, Snipes, Abramitis, and Allen, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then White in 5th of the drivers who stay out. Assuming the fresh cars can get through, I think Damon Mays is happy if he can hang on to a top 10, right? I don't think it's race leader bust here. I don't see him holding off the likes of McCandless and McCullough, but if the 13 can end up higher than 15th, I think this ends up being a good call.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the outlook here, and it's don't fight too hard. Don't try and hold anyone up, because that just makes things even worse. It causes checkups even further on in the pack. I think the thing that I'm going to watch out for, the likes of Snipes and Abramitis now up on the podium, what do they choose to do? How worn are their tires? Because their pace, Evan, is ultimately what is going to dictate how comfortable Cody Dutton feels.
And we're going to try it this time through. 305 laps left to go. Cody Dutton first time as the control car, and he is gone to turn 1.
Mays makes it 3 wide with the former race leader McCandless trying and get around the outside. And look at that. The former race leader, Evan, on the fresh tires, already up into the top 5.
Mays going to the inside with 2. McCandless working the outside with 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. And just like that, Mays gets past. And now McCandless going to set his sights on up. He gets to 4th. He wants more. The big loser at all of this is Christopher Allen on the inside, like the slow lane on the freeway, getting passed by a couple of cars a lap.
And more 3-wide action further back. It's Timu Toyka now back up into the top 10. One more car that took 4 tires. Meanwhile, out front, McCandless sniffs a podium position now, Evan.
And he is all over the back of Abramitis, trying to make the pass. He's the better car, doesn't need to force the issue, flashes the nose to the inside. Smart, responsible decision by the 6 to not fight him for that. And again, Mays is doing good, following McCandless through traffic, outrunning McCullough. I like the call by the 13 as that 6 car of Abramitis goes way up the hill, and McCandless makes a pass on Snipes for second. It is now a 1.5 second gap between Cody Dutton and the hard charger and Blake McCandless.
A bit of separation between McCandless and McCullough as well. McCullough's trying to clear the two-tire Damon Mays coming down across the start-finish line, but this has worked out in a much better way than McCandless had in terms of the lap traffic here, Evan, because 1.4 seconds clear as the tires start to burn off. It's Cody Dutton that can really control which line he wants to pick.
And does he force McCandless to go to the outside? I mean, right now, between those top two, Dutton was faster than McCandless by an entire 1/10 of a second. That's one thing to keep in mind. The majority of the cars are on fresh tires now, right? That was the popular call this last pit cycle. But their advantage is only 12-lap fresher tires. Is that enough to make a difference? Yes. But are they going to slice through the field as easily? No, but a yellow won't matter. And for the second time tonight, Trevor McManus is around in 3 and 4.
So let's spool up our replay machine. He comes straight down onto pit road here, Evan. Is it going to be another solo car incident, or is the 19 going to be involved as well? Nope, too much speed, and a vicious snap of oversteer into the outside retaining wall.
I wonder if he tried to change his line after he had committed to the corner, catching very quickly up on Jacob Blankenship, maybe trying to go a little bit lower into the corner to get underneath him. And once you commit, you can't really give it a little bit more wheel. And I think that 19 spooked the 22 car just a little bit and spins it on his own.
Yeah, spins it on his own, and once more then under caution. And we have crossed now, Evan, the quarter mark of this race. 100 laps done, still 300 to go. And attrition, we expected it to be a big factor. Still have our 25 starters still out there on the track.
It's a long way to go, so we'll take an opportunity to step aside. Cody Dutton leads ahead of Blake McCandless and Tanner McCullough.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now. Sim racers from around the globe, honoring a revolutionary era of open-wheel racing. With a beast not easily tamed, roaring around legendary circuits at breakneck speed. When engineers and drivers push boundaries, sometimes too far. When heroes muscled roaring beasts wheel to wheel around the hallowed ground. A time when the only driver aids were his 2 feet. Perfect combination of man, machine, and speed. Experience the competition and the glory of the early 80s IndyCar action. The Lionheart Retro Series, presented by Sim Experience, starts now. A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now. Sim racers from around the globe, honoring a revolutionary era of open-wheel racing. With a beast not easily tamed, roaring around legendary circuits at breakneck speed. when engineers and drivers push boundaries, sometimes too far. When heroes muscled roaring beast wheel to wheel around the hallowed grounds. A time when the only driver aids were his 2 feet. Perfect combination of man, machine, and speed. Experience the competition and the glory of the early 80s IndyCar action. The Lionheart Retro Series, presented by Sim Experience, starts now.
Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV. Continued coverage here of the iRacing North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup. Evan Pasoko, my name is Arjuna Kenkipati on the call today as we get back to green flag racing with 1/4 of the action done. Evan is working his way through some technical issues, but we are back live, and already Cody Dutton tries to make his way in towards this little bit of a buffer over Blake McCandless and Tanner McCulloch that is chasing him down. A little bit of separation to Brett Hahn, who finds himself back up in towards the top 4 for the first time today. As it looks like, oh no, Sean Kimball back down onto pit road. So it looks like we might have 2 retirements on the day so far. I do believe Evan Pasoko is joining me back once again. Evan, it's been an interesting 100 laps to say the very least, and still got a very long way to go.
Yeah, a bit of attrition on track and on the technical side as well. But yeah, off of that restart, we see that Dutton's able to get on through and take the race lead back from Blake McCandless. So that number 66 machine tucks back in line to the number 2 spot. And they will, I think, do their best to keep each other in check, right? The question here is going to be, with a 12-lap difference on tires, is that going to be a game changer? Because I think if it is, that's going to dictate some of the strategy for later on in this race as you ride on board. And let's just check that out with the 4 car. I mean, you could see different lines. Not everybody on the bottom. We've kind of touched on it just a little bit, and I mentioned that maybe at this end of the racetrack, you can go a little bit higher up. I think early in the run, these guys feeling like they need to go to the very bottom to get the car to rotate. But 400 laps is a lot of rubber that's going to be put down, and the track temp as well very high this afternoon. So I think that's an attributing factor to all the self-spins. Is it is a real hot and slick track as we see a 3-way battle here led by that 6 car of Tom Abramitis.
And you can see Damon Mays, who of course gambled the last time that cars came down onto pit road. 2 tires, the 21 sends it very deep in through turn 1, just about able to hang on to it without making contact with John Theodore in front. But they are starting to get more desperate, Evan. You talked about the rubber buildup. I don't know if Michael Dix got the message just yet.
No, he wants to just keep going hard, and like they were at the beginning of the race, right? Not yet willing to kind of change things up just a little bit. But that's going to be a key as well, right? Is adapting and changing as the racetrack changes. I talk about that track temp. It's only 83 air temp, but it's 115 degrees on the track. So it makes a huge difference in the amount of grip that's out there in these cars that are already pretty tough to drive to begin with.
What's the classic cliche that always gets used at this point, Evan? It's like the drivers must be trying to avoid breaking an egg when they're on the throttle at this point. They must be so cautious. You talked about some of the self-spins that we've been having. It just illustrates the level of quality up in the field as you see the top 3 separated by just 0.4 of a second. And for the very first time, we've actually got a 5-way fight for the race lead. Brett Hahn and Jaden Hopp are in very close pursuit and side by side for 4th position.
And you can see as this continues on now, battle for the lead as McCandless has gotten back underneath the 80 car of Dutton. Thought it was done when that 80 machine was able to get on through on the restart, but McCandless with a counter punch, and we wondered with Dutton driving through the field early, was he the better of the 2? But McCandless is working at a tire disadvantage and taking it to Cody Dutton as he'll retake the race lead at lap 122.
Yeah, but Dutton is not content to give this one up so easy, and I think he's also trying to think about how he can slot back into line with McCulloch, who not going to fight this one too hard. And the iRacing staff member here, thinking about the long run, Evan, now tries to set up an over-under potentially.
Well, that'd be key, right? If you can let those two fight with each other, not just in the terms of one pass for position, but in the terms of this race, let these guys go at it, right? We saw that a little bit of a touch earlier when Dutton was trying to make the inside work, and he just kind of walked it up the hill a foot or two and ended up in the door of Blake McCandless. No harm, no foul that time through, but if you get more of that, if you allow that to continue for the better part of this 400-lap race, then you can almost let them wear each other out mentally, but also physically with the cars, right? Let them do the hard work for you. You sit there in third, conserve your equipment, and then when the opportunity presents itself, strike.
And going off of that, I think the stop-start nature of the early portions of this race don't help in terms of mental fatigue, because it increases the length of the race. It means that you have to switch on and switch off in very short fashion, as well as, oh, you see a big slide of oversteer there from McCulloch, and that opens the door for Jaden Hopp behind. But you're right, Evan, mental fatigue will be crucial come the end of this race. I wonder if we'll start to see drivers start to crack and start making a few more mistakes.
Yeah, both, right? It's going to be mentally, and it's also going to be in terms of that race car staying in one piece, and that's up to the driver. It's going to be their responsibility to keep them clean and to keep them on the racetrack. So as this continues and lap traffic is a factor once more, but not an issue there, as way up top is Charles Wimbley. He'll fall a third lap down, I believe, and just trying to stay in this race, running exactly where he started in 23rd spot. He's the 23rd ranked driver in this race. So in that context, all is right in the world. Of course, he is pretty heavily damaged. And kind of quietly, Jaden Hopp has become the fourth car in this, right? And that may sound silly to say that. He started fourth. He runs fourth. So did, Brett Hahn behind, who started fifth and runs in fifth. But Hopp has improved, I think, over the course of the 130 laps thus far, and could be kind of a dark horse if they can continue to work on that to maybe steal a podium or more.
That's right on board with him, and see just how smooth the car is. Where's the weight kind of moving around? Very gentle on the power. No major concerns, I would say, if you are Jaden Hopp right now. And like you say, coming on strong. And Cody Dutton, by comparison, we were talking about cars coming on strong earlier and maybe slipping back. I wonder if it's not just a tire disadvantage for Dutton at this point, Evan, but maybe changing track conditions, maybe slightly warmer, slightly cooler track means that car isn't as much of a rocket ship as we saw it slightly earlier.
Yeah, you're going to set the car up for what you want at the moment, and we're not going to see that many changes as far as the weather, which is going to help, right? Track heats up, track cools down. If you kind of adjust things for a hot slick track and then we get some cloud cover, things cool down, you can end up on the opposite end. But one thing that helps is this isn't a race that's going to go day to night, right? We're currently running at kind of 1 in the afternoon. It's the hottest time of the day. That's why that track temp is up there, now climbing to 117 degrees as we watch it on the battle for 11th position with Joey Yates fighting on top, but on the inside is Alex Crasper. But there is no day-night transition, so it's not going to be a huge factor, but you do definitely need to keep up on things. And also, if the car's good but not great, are you willing to risk to make some adjustments? Because you could always try to do something to improve the handling and hurt it, and you don't want to kind of artificially hurt your own chances by going the wrong way on an adjustment.
I always think that drivers who are not necessarily engineers themselves, it's always very bold when you try something in the garage by yourself, and to do it mid-race, this is not necessarily the type of environment, Evan, where drivers will have engineers or spotters. You're obviously very accustomed to, on a Tuesday night, the NASCAR Coca-Cola Series, where those are professional operations, I would say. You've got the likes of, an esports giant like TSM coming in to sponsor our NASCAR champion from last year, as you see much more oversteer once more from the old blue machine. This is the type of race where the driver really has to make that call, and I wonder which one of our drivers is going to be the boldest and which one will have the most success, because you get a few opportunities, a few bites at the cherry, if you will, and a few opportunities to maybe go in the wrong direction, but come the end of 400 laps, you need your car to be in the right position as Jaden Hopp tries to battle for third position here.
And he's got a real good look going on the inside of McCullough. It's funny, at times tonight it's looked like McCandless's race, at other times it's looked like Dutton's. McCullough's been that strong third-placed car, but Jaden Hopp moving through the field and on the inside to a race-high P3. Do not count him out. That battle did take a lot out of these cars. It's allowed first and second to pull about a second change up to the lead. You can see McCandless is a second ahead of Dutton, who's basically a second ahead of Hopp. So that battle for third did hurt those two just a little bit, but let's see if Jaden Hopp can flip the switch.
I turned things up a little bit as we approach the midway part of this stint of the race. I don't know how you think about this one, Evan, but I've kind of split it up into 4 sections. 100 lap kind of sprints to the end. Ooh, there's a car down on the inside. That's Richard Tam. He'll make his way back onto track, and I think we stay under green as well, Evan. I think we got very, very lucky there.
Yeah, with how tight the yellows have been called tonight by Barney the flagman, that could have easily been one, but it was not. There's the back half of it, almost to a complete stop, but he gets off it on the grass. He was just trying to make a pass on the number 15 car, and you can see very similar to the last yellow we saw, Virginia, where the car who spun was coming up on lapped traffic and trying to go to the bottom. It's hard to drive it in aggressively to the inside in 3 and 4, and I think it was basically that same effect, and Richard Tam spun on his own, righted the ship, keeps on going. He rides 2 laps down in the number 20 position as Cody Dutton now dealing with some traffic up top. That's the lapped car, Jacob Blankenship.
And he's not making this one easy for second place. Gap between McCandless and Dutton, by the way, Evan, up above 2 seconds now. So it's not the tires that are proving to be the crucial factor. It's which driver is able to work their way through this lap traffic and slice and dice, if you will, with the minimal time loss. And now I think Jaden Hopp has got an opportunity to try and get up into second.
And a caution at 1:44. There's some smoke on the front straightaway. I believe it was Devon Fountain or Fontaine. There's about 3 different ways you could combine those two, but it was all on his own. 22nd position, 3 laps down. Back end snaps out, and she gone.
And interesting here that he chose to reset back down onto pit road immediately, because we did see a couple of issues where drivers may be slightly unsafe in terms of their rejoin, but no such concerns here. As look at this, cars down on pit road, and it's your race leaders, Evan. Jaden Hopp does not follow them down.
Yeah, this is going to be the first time in some time that McCandless and Dutton are on the same strategy, right? That they decide to come down pit road together. You would assume the call is going to be for 4. We did see a pretty good showing, though, admittedly, by Damon Mays. Remember how I said he was 15th when he made the 2-tire call, and if he's anything better than 15th, it's a win? At the time of yellow, he was 11th. So the 2-tire call bought him 4 positions of a net gain. Car's going to get off the pit road. McCandless easily first car off, followed by Dutton and McCullough, and no change there. Of course, you mentioned that Jaden Hopp did not pit. He will pit this time through, and that is going to cost the 12 a lot of positions.
Well, I'm very intrigued by this one, Evan. That is all I can really say. Car will get up on the jacks for right sides. You would expect left sides as well, given the length of the stints that we've gone on, and indeed, as you see, left side jacks go up. He's going to drop all the way then to about 16th position, give or take.
Yeah, I don't know what the... I mean, it was very clear that you needed to pit, right? These guys have been out there for a good bit on tires, and we've talked about the tire number of available sets on pit road. I think the correct decision is to get the rubber, but just for whatever reason opted to not pit with everybody else. And now that he decides to pit later, he will go from the number 3 position down to about 11th. So he basically burns a dozen spots there just when it looked like he was starting to make some strides to be a top 3 car.
I got a little note on my timing screen. Sorry, Evan, that something had happened to that number 10 car, but no, just pulling to the side of the track to let on the cars on lead laps in front of him. No major damage there. 150 laps done with this one, Evan, and out of the 25 lead lap cars, we talked about attrition. Let's give a little bit of an update. 16 on the lead lap, 3 one lap down. You'll see they cycle themselves across now once more.
In the drivers out of this one is at, I believe, just one with Charles Wimbley, and that is just recently, as the number 3 car pulled to pit road just before the caution flag came out, decided to put it in the garage. So you get guys like Trevor McManus, some 55 laps down, but still out there. They're going to benefit as this race continues on. Green flag back in the air for Blake McCandless. Fresh tires with Cody Dutton. Let's see how they fight when they're on an even playing field.
And we saw Dutton was very committed, trying to get to the lead once before. Will he be as aggressive this time, Evan, knowing that there's still a long way in the race to go? Across the start-finish line, and Dutton does look to the inside, and side by side they work through turn number 1.
And last time he made the pass on McCandless, it was using the inside, and once more it pays off for the RNC Towing Chevrolet. Cody Dutton back to the race lead, working lap 153 on even tires. He made McCandless look like a mid-pack car.
McCandless, I think, just didn't want to fight that one too hard, Evan. He knows that there's still a long way to go. Might be expecting a bit of a green flag run, or, as you see right now, just the short run pace, not on the side of McCandless. You see Brett Hahn looking to the inside of McCulloch. Dutton's already cleared these cars by 0.6 of a second here.
He is checking out, and there's a point to be made that you may want to save just a little bit in case this is a long run. But how about Brett Hahn and all of this, right? To the inside on Tanner McCulloch. He should get this spot. The 4's going to stick on that quarter panel for another corner, but down here that should go to the 3 car, and Brett Hahn now in a race high P3.
Race high P3 for him, race high P5 for Teemu Toika. He's up 8 on the day so far. Alongside with him, John Theodore up 9. So top 10 starting to look a little bit more like we've got some hard charges. Of course, Cody Dutton up an incredible 19 positions here, Evan.
It's just been so good how Dutton's been able to get through the field. And you mentioned John Theodore, as we see now Hahn won another spot looking to the inside on McCandless, and also wanted to echo that thought to give a bit of a shout out to John Theodore. We haven't talked a ton about that number 7 entry tonight, but he's done a very good job driving up from position number 15. McCandless defends second for the moment, but as Cody Dutton has increased his lead to more than 1.2 seconds over this battle, gotta wonder what's changed, because this race looks very different than it did 100 laps ago.
And about 50 laps ago, Evan, I was maybe postulating that maybe Dutton was just hanging back, or maybe the car had even swung towards McCandless's favor, and well, I'm being proved very, very wrong now. The gap between the leaders, 1.5 seconds, and well, if you're Cody Dutton, lap traffic starts to be a bit of a factor with Sam White and Jacob Blankenship already 15 seconds down the road from you, so he will start getting into the weeds of the lapped cars once more, Evan, very, very shortly.
But I'm with you on that thought, because 2 runs ago, I believe it was when we saw Dutton actually have the slight tire advantage, right? About a dozen or so laps fresher tires. He had the track position, and Blake McCandless passed him, went to the race lead. And at that point, we're thinking, well, early, Dutton drove through the field. He looked pretty good, but maybe it was hard to bet against that 66 machine, but this has swung way in favor of the 8 car, as Hahn's going to take another dive down to the bottom. Bottom not working for him off of 4, but with the aggressiveness that he's running at, I feel like it's only a matter of time. As also side by side back for 5th spot, Theodore trying to get through on the inside of Toika.
Inside works better for him, and I think he will be able to slide up into 5th. And the exit of turn 4 indeed gets the move done. Now I think you'll start to see Brett Hahn start to struggle. He's been running that inside, Evan, working those tires very, very hard. They must be screaming out in agony, and I'm sure at the moment, Tanner McCulloch is all over the rear end right now trying to get back into the podium positions.
Doing everything he can. And listen, this is why we run the race, right? If we were just going to hand out checkered flags based on who has the best 5, 10, 15 lap average in practice, who had the best queue time, who has the highest iRating, then it wouldn't be a sport, right? So that's why we run out a race. 400 laps is a long one, right? We're not even halfway home in this one, but we've already seen so much change in the strategy and the complexion of this race through the opening 165. It could very well run in this order to the end of the race. But with all the changes we've seen early, I have to think that there's still a lot in store for later on in this one. As way up top, McManus falls a 56th lap down to the race leaders, but he's still toughing it out. Soon he'll pass the retired Charles Wimbley to get one extra point position out of this one. But this group second on back is basically the whole field, right? I think the largest gap between cars outside of the difference between 14th and 15th is the gap between first and second. It is impressive what Dutton has done to separate himself from a very equal mid-pack.
And you know what I always say is one of the toughest things about racing, Evan, is that week in, week out, you'll have, now let's take a Cup Series race, for example, 35, 40 drivers competing, and they're some of the best racers in the world. Only one of them can win, whereas you go to a NFL game, for example, and you have 11 teams that play or 10 teams that play on a weekend, and 5 of them can win. There's only one winner in motorsports, and it is oh so cruel at times. 400 laps, anything can happen, and while Dutton might be looking very strong right now, lap traffic could be a factor. Even tires could start to be a factor later on in this one. You can't count your chickens before they've hatched the eggs, and very much looking forward to seeing if Dutton can become even more dominant, I think, in the second half of this race.
That's his goal, right? He wants it swing even more in his favor, and everybody else hopes that things can balance out just a little bit. Jaden Hopp, who was at one point, we were talking about how impressive his race had progressed, right? Got to third after being the longtime fourth-placed runner. Thought that he was going to make big strides. He kind of makes a bit of a miscommunication, a misstep. Again, I don't know if he thought pit road was closed or what, but there is no strategic decision to not pit with everybody else and then come down and lose spots, right? It's not a Talladega race or a Daytona where there is some logic to dropping back. So whatever that miscue was for Hopp, it has hurt him. He is 9th position, so he's picked up 2 spots since the restart. But what has aided the likes of McCandless and Dutton at many times tonight is when they've had to come through the field, they had a tire advantage, right? Hopp is not on any newer tires than the cars in front or behind him. And I was just talking about how this mid-pack is very even, right? We had seen a lot more separation, our junior, earlier in this race than we do now, right? You got 3 cars basically within a second of each other at any point, anywhere from 3rd through P10. So as the mid-pack improves, I think Hopp's going to have even more of a difficult time getting through traffic here, and he's watching all of this other fighting go on as here comes McCulloch back down on the bottom of the 3.
You make a good point, and I wonder as well, we haven't seen so much action in terms of side-by-side until now. I think the tires for Brett Hahn are well and truly cooked. John Theodore wants to try and get up into the top 4 as well. Gap between Dutton and McCandless has been, give or take, holding there and thereabouts. Jaden Hopp not able to take advantage at all. It's not just that tire disadvantage, it's the fact that everyone else has been playing very, very nicely. And as we head into the halfway point of this one, he's going to be slightly disappointed, but we talked about mental fatigue earlier. You also can't let yourself get into a bad mental space. You need to focus in on the job at hand and can't let yourself get too disheartened, as there is still lots of opportunity left on the table.
Well, the point that you made earlier is we watch this battle continue as McCandless has pulled away from second spot, and it's the McCulloch fight with some lap traffic up top at Blankenship, which I think is hindering the forward just a little bit. And you know, these other battles with Abramitis on back. I mean, there's battles all over the track. The fact that you were talking about, you know, for a lot of these drivers, somebody like a Blake McCandless, right, who's running in the NASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, hoping to get into the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series for 2022. Normally, when they're doing official racing, if it's those series, if it's you know, NIS or anything else on the service, a lot of the time with high strength of field events, you know, drivers are very locked, very serious, right? Those aren't short races, but they're normally 50% as we're beating and banging now up the road. It was the 15 to machine of Blankenship, or sorry, the 19 to Blankenship in Sam White. Lap cars hold it up the mid-pack, and I'll hold that point for a moment because the yellow is out at lap 180.
Oh, and it's Michael Dix as well. He'd been having a rather good day. The bumping and banging, though, between lap traffic, not sure I'm so impressed at that one then, Evan, as you had the third place on back group trying to clear them. Take a look at this replay once more. It's a self-spin, but I think more importantly, all of that bumping and banging was enabling the top three to scamper on away. Let's pick up live pictures once more, though, Evan, because pit road is once more a busy place.
Also, just want to mention, it looked like a really late spin for Dix, right? I think it was more so of a spin when he put the foot to the floor off of the corner as opposed to it being loose in. But you are right, your race leaders are down pit road. It looks like Toyka and Allen decide to not come down pit road. They have been out there for 34 laps or so. Looks like Philip Snipes will be the first car off of pit road, but he missed his stall. He just drove right through. And in the drag race off of the pit lane, McCandless barely stays in front of Cody Dutton. It'll be for, assuming everybody else pits, Allen Toyka now down to the pit lane. And I would think Snipes would come back in because he missed his stall. It'll be either second or third. And an interesting call here again by Toyka. Same thing that we saw earlier in this race out of the 12-car hop, right? Arjuna pitting, but not with everybody else, is guaranteed to cost you spots, and 2 cars did it that time.
Well, I just wonder if Timu is trying to entertain his stream here, Evan. Of course, Timu does stream on Twitch, member of Simsa Esports as well. Might just be trying to have a little bit of fun here in this 87 Cup car. We were talking about how for, you know, someone like McCandless who is trying to compete in that NASCAR Road to Pro Championship, this is just probably a little bit of fun. Not sure how much practice he's done. Not sure how much work into the setup has gone in as well. But nevertheless, it's proving to be an interesting challenge. And the great thing about iRacing, every day is race day, right, Evan? And I'm sure there's a lot that he's learning, not just that's going to help him when he gets to the Road to Pro in terms of, you know, the car itself, but racecraft, learning about yourself as well. There is so much that you need to know to compete at the top levels of sim racing, and just another opportunity for some of these drivers to get out there and compete against some of the very best in sim racing.
Well, that ties into the point that I was going to make right before that yellow came out, right? When these guys are running NIS and other things, it is very structured. It is very serious. We talk about drivers, the mental fatigue of running 400 laps. You have to stay loose. You will be exhausted when this race is done, even more so if you try to stay you know, super locked in. So it's good to use these yellows as an opportunity to relax, take a deep breath. And I know a lot of drivers streaming, good chance to talk with chat, keep yourself loose over the course of a long one. This restart comes with 184 laps complete, 216 to go. And the McCandless and Dutton show gets a reboot. They're at it, 1-2.
Was there a little bit of bumper banging there on that restart, Evan? Cody Dutton trying to get the launch of his lifetime. I do think I heard the slight contact between them as McCandless held the field up, but Dutton, as a result, unable to challenge on these opening couple of laps. There is a battle, though, for fourth position, between Brett Hahn and John Theodore.
And that 3-car going to win out on the bottom. Battle for the race lead. Here comes Dutton. So he did give him a shot trying to guess the restart. It ended up being a pretty bad one, and it'll cut off the 66 that time. So Dutton was not all the way clear, but he pushed up on the 66, and he forced Blake McCandless to put the brakes on to not run him over.
and we saw the dominant car in the early portion of the last run, Evan, was Cody Dutton. But as we came into that caution period, I think McCandless was starting to come good. So can Dutton build up that same kind of a buffer as he did the last time? Or can McCandless maybe have found an adjustment on pit road to be slightly quicker on these opening laps?
And I'm trying to find a weak point, right? Where's the chink in the armor for Cody Dutton? I don't see it right now. We know he's good long run because he used some green flag runs earlier in this race to drive from 20th to 2nd before the pit strategy made the first exchange for the race lead happen, right? Since then, he's been so good on the short run. Even when McCandless kind of schooled him on that restart, right? Dutton tried to guess it, got on the gas, actually got into the back of the 66, had to check up, and I think McCandless's advantage was about 4 car lengths into the corner. Even then, Dutton was able to catch up, pass him, and is walking away to the tune of 3 to 0.2 of a second better per lap than everybody else.
Just looks as though the McCandless car is a bit tight on these opening runs. You can see Cody Dutton much freer and able to roll speed both through the entry and exit of the corner here. And I think maybe that goes into what we saw on that last green flag run, Evan. It took about 25 laps for McCandless's car to really come into itself, and that kind of a swing, I don't know if he's going to be able to adjust in the pit stop. So this might be something that he has to live with now. And if we get a caution in, maybe the last 30 laps or something, it's going to be very, very interesting how McCandless decides to play the strategy in terms of coming down onto pit road.
And a caution, 194, just on the doorstep of halfway home. It is Theodore on the bottom. Another name who we were just talking not that long ago, G, about making some big strides. Theodore started 15th, was up to 8th, and he lost it 1 and 2.
Once more, just a little bit too much speed. This is such a difficult car to kind of manage over the course of a long race, and halfway through now, Evan, I do start to wonder if mental fatigue starts to become a bit of a factor here, and it's only going to get tougher for these drivers, not even halfway, and I'd expect this race is going to go on for at least another 60 minutes.
Well, what you would think is that the deeper we get into the race and the more cars that are out of the race, that you would see less yellows, right? But I think the trend has actually been the green flag runs have been shorter lap 100 to 200 than they were in the opening 100, which will be interesting to follow, right? Cars are spinning, but they're not really crashing, right? We had that big pileup in 4. We've seen a couple of instances where somebody spins and somebody crashes into them because they can't really find a way through, but we're not really seeing big multi-car accidents. So even though we're seeing yellows, those yellows aren't taking cars out of the race, and I think that's why we're not seeing the runs go longer, because we have, of the 25 cars who started this race, 22 of them still in it, I think, right now?
Yeah, I think Michael Dix, of course, the 21 car that spun on the second to last caution, he's now our most recent retiree, Devin Fontaine, depending on how you pronounce it, and Charles Wimbley as well. Great to see, as I think Trevor McManus is down on pit road. Not sure if that's retirement or just regular service. Great to see a number of cars, though, Evan, many laps down, still out there and circulating. Not endurance racing, but in the true spirit of garnering whatever result that you can and just getting out on track and pounding away in the laps. That is what a number of these cars are still doing.
And don't want to discredit John Theodore, by the way. He said he was up to 8th. He was actually as high as position number 5 when that yellow came out. So he decides to come down pit road, get it fixed up, kind of back to square one, right? Back nearly where he started this race, but didn't damage it. So I think he's got a good shot. And lots of time, granted, still to get the job done.
Yeah, lots of time. And I'm just wondering, Evan, Cody Dutton now has a bit of a gap. What happened to Blake McCandless in terms of the car? What's he done on pit road, and how is he going to be able to respond and work his way through some of this traffic?
And maybe throwing the kitchen sink at it just a little bit, right? Try to make some adjustments to get himself in position to get back into this, right? P2 isn't bad. He's still in a good spot, but I think he wants more than that, so maybe trying to change things up a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. Lights are off on the pace truck, so we will be back to green flag racing this time around, just about to get to the halfway point of this race. It is Cody Dutton, Tanner McCulloch, Brett Hahn, and then Teemu Toika, Alex Krapser, the top 5. A much easier start for Dutton. No one to really contend with in front of him. He's now already clear 0.4 of a second from McCulloch entering turn 1. Teemu Toika looks to the outside to try and get something done on Brett Hahn. Nice little clean restart here, Evan.
Well, that's the key, is get off on these restarts clean, and it'll be interesting to see now that McCandless is dealing with traffic for the first time tonight. Does it hurt him at all, right? We've seen some other drivers get cycled back in traffic and struggle. Is that going to be the case for the 66? You're right on board. A hill drive to the inside of Krasper. Pretty easy move for position number 5, but it's going to be significantly tougher when you get up to the likes of Toika and Hahn.
Lap difference in tires, about 12 laps, 15 laps or so. Already McCandless a bit loose on the outside, but I think fresh tires will enable him to sweep on past Teemu Toika. He's up into 4th now. How long does it take for him to get on past that US Air Force machine in front, though, Evan?
Well, Hahn could be quite the challenge, right? I don't think he's better than McCandless at that point. Don't think many cars are, with the exception of Dutton. So the 66 is going to get down through. But I think we kind of have 2 battles, right? The 1A is Cody Dutton, and your 1B right now is Blake McCandless. And this race is very likely to be won by those 2. If any, I think that the laps led under green by somebody not named Dutton or McCandless is very low. Now, there's always a chance you get a yellow, some pit strategies, somebody else could steal this thing. It is far from a done deal, but those are the best cars. But that battle for 3rd is almost the more interesting one to me at the moment, right? Because you got Tanner McCulloch just now getting passed by McCandless for 2nd. There goes the 66th on the bottom. But then you got Brett Hahn. You got Philip Snipes. Teemu Toika hasn't really been in that conversation tonight, right? Is kind of topped out at P5. Right now rides in 6th. He is looking to take that next step. So this number 2 battle, if you will, from 3rd on back, I think is what's going to be the most entertaining. As we're past halfway. Look out, Philip Snipes, what a save.
Great car control, and in a race where we've seen so many times, Evan, the car gets a little bit loose, the driver loses control and slides into the path of oncoming traffic. Philip Snipes able to avoid getting back under caution. Let's spool up this replay. We'll catch the tail end of it, I do believe, here. Just once more, getting onto the power a little bit too aggressively, and let's see, coming out of turn 4, how he holds on to this one.
At that point, it looks like it's gone. And that's an incredible job, not only to save that car, but to not come down the hill and wreck everybody else who was right there. Very fortunate that that wasn't, a 3-4 car pileup.
Incredible car control, and a testament to driver skill in this race that we've had. Yes, we've had those solo car spins that have resulted in cautions, but that's just because, Evan, it's a very tough car. We've also seen some incredible racing, and Cody Dutton, just a lap ago, was side by side, but now half a second separates our race leaders.
And now we'll see McCandless having the benefit this time through with the fresh rubber, right? McCandless on some 15-lap-old tires. Dutton, along with McCulloch, Hahn, and Toika did not pit. Neither did Alex Krasper. Somebody like a Damon Mays, also didn't pit. So split decision on that last yellow. That gives McCandless the advantage, right? And that's why I think if you're that 66 team, or even if you're that number 2 battle, like I was talking about, right? That second group of cars, McCulloch, Hahn, others. All it takes is to be on the right strategy at the end of the race, and you could win this thing, right? As we watch the 9 work the bottom. Curious how Snipes is going to handle this, right? You have to think that big slide in 3 and 4 would have really heated up and eaten away at those tires for the Exxon Ford down on the bottom. I think that's a Ford Thunderbird, but I think the paint scheme has got a couple of Chevy bow ties. So Talk about confusing for the 9 car, but I thought he was really going to struggle here after that save. He's done the opposite. He's going right back to the outside of Hahn and battle for 4th.
Yeah, very impressive. Like you say, tires must have been building up heat throughout that slide that we saw, but not much opportunity for those tires to cool down at such a short lap. But whatever he's done, car is very much in control now, as you see, up into 4th, as now we see John Theodore and Timu Toika. They've been scrapping it out basically the entirety of this race so far, Evan. And I think Theodore down the inside, back up into 6th after his own incident a couple of laps ago.
And just listen, right? As they go through the corner, everybody sliding the tires. From the second they enter to they get back on the gas and get on the straightaway, they are sliding these cars all the way through. And that goes back to the point I talked about earlier, right? It's just the way these things drive. If you're driving comfortably, that's a synonym for slow in an 87 stock car. And that's why these guys are sliding all the way through the corner, is that is how you got to approach it if you want to be fast. And
it's what makes this car, Evan, such a difficult challenge, because of course the main thing that you miss in sim racing is, as people like to call it, the seat of the pants feeling, right? The car slipping and sliding around you, underneath you. All that you get is the audio cues, you get the car maybe through the wheel indicating what's happening, but it does not replace the seat in the pants feel. So it is a difficult challenge, and I think maybe that explains why we see some of these incidents where drivers just a bit too aggressively trying to get onto the power, or maybe even too aggressive into the corner. They just don't feel that the car is unstable. They don't feel it jostling around under them. If you ride on board here, Evan, you'll see that the weight is always moving around. The car is never settled, and it means it's a very difficult car to control.
Let's ride around, if we can, a couple of laps on board with Timu Toika here in the number 7 spot, and just see how this car behaves in the center of the corner and how hard it is to kind of hit the same marks lap after lap. You're going to notice the line almost feels different every time, and it's because these cars, to some extent, have a mind of their own.
You call it the mind of your own. I mean, it's just that engine, right? It delivers so much power, and you've got to try and rein it in by what I like to call the right foot traction control, right? It's your own ability to manage all of that power and deliver it as not just smoothly as possible, but when you need to, right, Evan? I think a lot of people who don't do a lot of oval racing maybe don't really appreciate that it's not about braking and then just trying to get on the power as aggressively as you can. It's about momentum. How do you maximize it through each phase of the corner? And it's not just about turning left. There's much more that goes into oval racing.
And the fortunate thing about these cars, and it's aided with it being a short track, right? I mean, you can take a modern-day NASCAR Cup car here, and there's going to be significantly lower aero challenges, if that's how you want to describe it. Then you'll see at intermediate tracks. But with these cars, you can race around each other. They're not made to be aerodynamically sound, right? I mean, they're not the Twisted Sister Gen 4. They're big, they're boxy, and they're heavy. And that's why they're hard to drive, but it's also why they can race around each other, kind of like a NASCAR bomber almost at your local short track is how they feel when you drive them in the sim, if you've been accustomed to kind of the modern version of NASCAR racing.
And maybe just an indication of the path that the next-gen car needs to go. And, of course, a lot of excitement as NASCAR does reveal that next-generation concept and, indeed, the manufacturer bodies that will go with it as well. So, interested to see how the future goes. Like you say, there is a big difference in the type of racing product that we have nowadays versus in the past. You will see, though, Evan, let's talk about strategy here. We saw McCandless down on pit road the last time around. I don't think it's necessarily the car that has made a big adjustment and has come alive. I think it's just tires. 16 laps difference between him and Dudden, and the gap now up to 1.8 seconds. And last time around, it was almost a full tenth of a second that McCandless extended the gap.
And it's just hard to pinpoint what the correct call at the end of the race is going to be, right? Because earlier in this one, we talked about how Cody Dutton had about 12 lap fresher tires than McCandless, but McCandless passed him. This time, it's McCandless with about 14 lap fresher tires who passed and has checked out on Cody Dutton. But then when they're on even tires, it seems Cody Dutton has the advantage. So if I'm Cody Dutton, that would tell me I need to do whatever Blake does. If I stay on strategy with him, I don't have an excuse, right? If I can execute the way I've executed this race thus far, I have a real good opportunity to win this race. If you're McCandless, you're going to want to go off strategy, right? If you've accepted the fact that Dutton's faster, and I don't think Blake has, I should mention. I think Blake still feels like he's got a really good chance, and he does, to beat Cody Dutton if they're equal strategy, equal tires in a straight-up race to the end. So maybe that's when that battle for third on the back, a McCullough, a Theodore, a Snipes comes into play, where those guys, when we get into the final 100, maybe intentionally go off strategy, because this isn't a points for a championship, right? We're not worried about, oh, I'm going to get 5th here at the Throwback Cup 400 and I'll be happy, right? Good points day. But these special events, you really want the bragging rights of winning, right? Especially like this when we're talking about the top split race and 2 other races going on the service right now.
Oh, no!
And the leader! Blake McCandless from the top spot just got turned by Richard Tam, a lapped car who he was passing.
You'll see here, I got just a heart-in-mouth moment. In fact, there was an incident in front. You see the 10 car slipping and sliding. Jordan Fruin, an initial incident there. I'm not sure what happens. One more look at this aerial look brought to us by ATVO, the graphical partners at RaceSpotTV. We'll slow it down, Evan. I wonder if McCandless just comes up the track very slightly, and Richard Tam just coming down very slightly as well, because he's got to turn into the corner, Evan. He's got nowhere to go.
I think it's both. And immediately Blake McCandless says over the radio, thanks, right? He's not happy with Richard Tam. Richard Tam said, I was all the way up. Watch those white lines on the dash, right? Tam is coming down a little bit. McCandless is coming up to give himself a better turn into the corner. I don't think that contact happens, though, if Jordan Fruin does not spin, right? We saw that 10 car spinning into the wall. I think if that doesn't happen, McCandless doesn't step up that extra foot or two, and that incident never happens. That is just really bad timing, and talk so much about how we haven't really seen wrecks. McCandless took a good shot late from Sean Kimball, and that car may be out of contention for the race win. You can see everybody files off pit road while he stays for damage repairs, and all of a sudden, this race has been flipped on its head.
Flipped. I think I can think of some other adjectives as well that work very, very nicely. There you'll see the pit stop time for McCandless. 31.2, so it's only about 10 seconds longer, Evan, but I don't know how much you can judge from the visual indications of that car. He may have gotten away with that one. He's going to have to drive his way up through the field once more, though. Should be a very interesting back half of the race then for your pole position winner.
In the discussion ongoing now between Blake, John Theodore, some of the other drivers in open chat about what's going to come from this. And again, there's zero intent on that incident by Richard Tam, and Tam probably could have stayed higher. If I'm Blake, though, I'm not riding a guy's door when I'm, that far ahead. I'm going to give him a little bit more room, and that's why I think the common denominator between one car coming down and one car going high was the fact that that other spinning car on the inside of the front straightaway just spooked McCandless enough to go up the hill. And super unfortunate, because I was really looking forward to watching that battle between the 66 and the 80 car continue through the rest of this race.
As I think Sean Kimball's engine is just expired, so it might be day done for him in the number 18 car. It's such a tough one, Evan, and I won't name names, but there have been a few of these lapped cars that have posed, I would say, more of a danger to your leaders than Tam did in that case. I feel for Tam because, again, not much he could do in that situation. He's all the way up to the wall. He has to start getting ready for the corner as well, and well, two does never goes into one, but we're back to green flag racing, Evan, and it's Cody Dutton now in control of this race.
And the caution acts as an equalizer, right? Previous yellow, it was almost the most split on strategy we've seen all afternoon. Half the cars had pitted, half the cars had not. Well, this was the great unifier. Everybody came in. Everybody took 4 tires with the exception of a couple of oddballs. So we are seeing what these cars have, and we're going to learn a lot by following Blake McCandless on this restart. What is left in that 66 car, and I'll tell you what, looking pretty good mid-pack. Two quick passes. And now look at Antoika and Theodore with his eyes set on P5.
And just like we saw in the last restart, Evan, where he came down for tires trying something different, he goes up to the high line, seems to maybe have a car that works slightly better there early in the run. He's going to get on past Toika, I do think, as we exit out of turn 4. That promotes McCandless back up into 6th position. Got a lot of work to do. 2.5 seconds adrift from the race leader.
And he's gone to the very outside. That's not a lane that McCandless has run much tonight, so I wonder if that's an adjustment based on how the car feels after that damage.
It could be, but again, we did see him run that line earlier on. I just think it's something where so many cars, Evan, they're down on the inside. They find themselves committed to that line that if you go to the outside, try something different, you'll find momentum and potential opportunities to get past as well. As the yellow flag waves, I believe it's for Trevor McManus in the 22 car coming out of turn number 4.
In another one of the ironic things, you'll see the replay. Trevor McManus is going to have a self-spin right here, and it's a pretty damaged car. He actually spins out. This is not a yellow, though. We are still green at this point, and then right here, when he actually hits 0 miles an hour, that is what triggers the time out of the caution. And I know that Trevor McManus apologizing to everybody. Obviously doesn't want to be caught in caution, Sir Junior, but I just have to say that if you're 60 laps down, maybe back it down just a little bit. I don't think you need to ride that line quite as much if you're that much out of contention.
Yeah, no, very, very much agreed. It's great that he's still out there and trying to garner the best result that he can in today's race, but back it down, just control the pace, and let's try and go green for the next 150-odd laps or so. McCandless back down on pit road, not just getting repairs, though. Appears as though he's getting tires as well in what is a very intriguing call here, Evan, because we talked about 13 tire sets. If McCandless is going to keep trying to get damage repaired like I would assume he's going to do over these next caution periods, at what point is he going to run out of tires as well?
It's a good question. And we'll see how, I mean, I think the rate that these drivers have been using their tires at should be within the range that would allow them to go to the end of this race. Because a lot of the guys have been down pit road 4, 5, 6 times, and they've got 13 sets of tires. But later in this race, like I said, this is all learning. Can we get away with using this, can we not take tires after 40? Or do we need to take tires then? Where that number is. All these different strategies that have played out early in this race is all kind of just to set up the strategy for the end of this one. So if they stay at whatever the rate's been, taking tires, not taking tires, then I think we will be fine. But maybe some of the cars mid-pack who have, accepted that they don't really have the speed of the top cars and have had to go off strategy just a little bit and take some more tires. More yellows means higher likelihood that they may be in some trouble by the time we get down to the end of this thing.
And of course, iRacing doesn't allow you to recycle tires just yet, which of course would change the game. Once you run out of tire set 7, that's it. You're out of luck. When you come down onto pit road, even if you got a puncture, you got to make do with it. So it does mean you've got to think about the tires slightly differently. I maybe slightly go a bit too conservative. Other drivers might have a bit more of an aggressive mindset in how they use their tires. It's all up to the driver at the end of the day. We've said on a number of occasions, lots of room for the drivers to rise to the cream of the crop, and that's what Cody Dutton has done so far today.
And back underway, these restarts are going to be a deciding factor now in if drivers start to think to go off strategy with Dutton, right? Everybody else just came down and pitted last time, so no pit stops for the race leaders this time through. Cody Dutton, chased by Tanner McCullough, and now Brett Hahn to a race-high position number 3. And try to hold off the likes of Snipes. And how about John Theodore? Talked about a spin a little bit ago. The 7 cars back in P5.
Doesn't take much, does it, Evan, for a driver to be back up in the pack. And Theodore, who's had a very quick car today, he's up 10 positions on the day so far, now sniffs a potential podium position. And you know what? With Philip Snipes in front, another car that's had to deal with some adversity in the day so far, Evan. It's one where we talked about the likes of, who was that car that just had that spin, McManus, being 60 laps down. But for a car that's had a small issue, maybe just a bit of a small spin, you can't afford to let that seep into your attitude, maybe get you down. You got to focus on the positives, and for both Snipes and Theodore, that is a potential podium in today's race.
And I think we have seen yellows, yes. It hasn't been a race that was going to go green all the way. Could have, but I just feel like that it wasn't going to happen with how hard these things are to drive on their own, and that's why I kind of guesstimated about 13 yellows total number or so, and we'll see how well that guess plays out by the end of the night. But, the amount of cars, I think, is a big factor also, right? I mean, North Wilkesboro has only got 30-something pit stalls, right? You can't fit 43 of them like you would, or 40, I guess, these days for a normal NASCAR Cup race. With this 1987 version in iRacing, it's only got 30-some-odd pits, right? But iRacing decided 25 going to be that max number for cars in this split. And that's also determined based on how many drivers wanted to participate and how they'd be evenly split across the different splits and whatnot. But I feel like 25 cars is a good number because you can have somebody like your 5th-placed runner, John Theodore, spin, fall back, but be able to get back through. And somebody like this, a Blake McCandless, right? If you had 38 cars and he spun and had that incident, he would be in an absolute mess. I think it's a good balance with the car count in this race where it's going to be challenging for him to get through, but if he can find the speed, still has the opportunity because there's enough room on track to make things happen.
It's one of those things as well where you've got flexibility, right? That's what the sim lets you do. You could come here and run 35 cars, but like you say, not necessarily the smartest choice. Might have meant that some of the incidents that we've seen today as well, Evan, would have been slightly bigger in terms of, the chain reaction. I think back to the eNASCAR Pro Invitational that ran here, of course, was it 12 months ago? It feels like just yesterday, if you ask me, but we saw a number of those incidents just get magnified in amplitude because of the number of cars that followed through as well. So it's worked out nicely, and as you see, McCandless switching back down to the inside line, trying to work through some of this traffic. Even for him, working with, 20 seconds of whatever damage he's taken repaired, he's up through the field very, very nicely right now. I am very intrigued if we get a couple more cautions in the next 100 laps or so, Evan, come the end of this race when all of these drivers are done what I like to call the data gathering, right? It's like if you're an algorithm, you have to start by figuring out what the problem you're solving it is, and then actually solve the problem. The last 20 laps, that's when you solve the problem. And for someone like McCandless, this might just be data that he can put in the bank. And you say, okay, my tires worked in this situation slightly better. They worked worse in this situation. So I wonder if this issue that McCandless has to deal with, this chaos that he's having to fight back from, is actually going to work out in his favor come the end of this race.
And unlike, in some of those other races, the NISs and the other things where these drivers do a lot of the prep that we had kind of talked about a little bit earlier, right? Instead of doing a couple hours of prep for a 200-lap race, you use the opening 200 laps of this one as your practice, right? That's why I had so much focus on all the different strategies as far as tires and when you can use them and kind of all those other things. Is you're doing your R&D in the race. The first half of a race this long is basically your practice time.
And you mentioned it slightly earlier as well, Evan, where this is, one of the ovals on the special event calendar that is its own unique thing, right? We don't have a year-long series for these 87 cars like we do the Cup cars. When we return for the future special events that RaceSpot will have coverage of. I think it's the Coke 600, the Darlington race as well, the full-length one there, and the finale at Phoenix. There is much more on the line than just one race. It is about the entire season and the points that drivers, are accumulating. And I can't wait, by the way, for that finale in Phoenix, because it is going to be wild. Some of the top drivers on the iRacing service, Evan, I'm sure will show up for that one, and hopefully it's you and me on the call for that as well.
It's a lot of fun, right? And I think that the different tracks, I mean, it's very often a conception and a misconception at that, you know, those outside of the oval world, that, well, an oval track's an oval track, right? It can be a different shape, it can be a different size, but at the end of the day, circle track racing is circle track racing, right? And I think that that couldn't be further from the truth, right? You have to take such different, vastly different approaches to a different kind of track. In this case, a totally different kind of car, right? Normally we talk about the difference between a NASCAR truck, a NASCAR Grand National, and a NASCAR Cup Series car. But especially this, old school oval racing, old school NASCAR is basically a whole other form, I would argue, than modern day stuff. So I think it's great when you see, you know, you talk about all the people streaming, the Theodores and the McCandlesses, who are in a good battle for 4th and 5th, just ahead of this duo, ahead of Toyka and Krasper. I mean, these drivers, even though they may focus primarily on oval, have a lot of versatility in that.
Toyka is also a multi-dimensional driver, very successful on the road as well, but I think that it also celebrates what a great job iRacing has done, right, Evan? They've not just brought back this 87 Cup car, they've revitalized the North Wilkesboro Speedway as well. What an achievement this really is in terms of bringing a historical site back to life on the iRacing service. It is amazing the level of detail that they've gone into. And you've got someone who is by no means an American. He must be racing at, what, 2 o'clock in the morning, give or take, is Teemu Toyka right now. But it's not just about America. This is about the entire globe being able to race these wonderful machines, and they are putting a show for us right now. You talked about the battle between Theodore and McCandless. Well, that gap now just 0.4 of a second.
Yeah, this is that mid-pack that has never separated much tonight, right? Theodore now in race high P4. And just looking at lap times, Blake McCandless is still fast. In fact, last lap, he was the fastest car on track. Now, it could be a bit different, right? Cody Dutton's got about a second over Tanner McCauley. He may not be pushing that hard. I think McCandless pretty close to 100% right now because he's trying to put a move on this 7 car. But if McCandless can get track position, and it doesn't have to come with pit strategy or catch it a yellow or any of that, right? If you can just get a spot from the 7 here, or wait till a caution because we'll slow things down as Richard Tam is in the fence up the road. End of the point. McCandless ain't out of this thing yet as the 14 cars around.
Can I put another commentator's curse down on you, Evan? Is that 2 on the day so far, or am I miscounting here?
I said hypothetically that he didn't need a yellow, so I don't know if that counts, because if I had said he needs a caution and he got the caution, I think that might have counted as, here's what happened. A lot of help on Tam as Billy Shea way too hard into turn 3, took him out.
I think this was just a slight misjudgment in terms of entry speed and always sliding up the track, and unfortunately Richard Tam down 4 laps on the day, finds himself turned once more. Now, though, question is who comes down onto pit road? The answer is almost everybody from the lead of this race.
I just keep thinking that there's going to be somebody to go off strategy, right? If they want to mix things up. I mean, that 2-tire call early in this race, the lone driver to do it way back in time, you know, made it work pretty well. And you look at the race off of pit road, Cody Dutton maintains the top position. It looks like Jacob Blankenship stays out to lead a lap. He'll come down pit road this time through. I would expect Trey Bannon to do the same thing also. But the 17 continues to stay out for the moment. But I just feel like, with the exception of McCandless, and he's the big question mark now with the damage, right? I mean, Hahn's good, Theodore's good, Toika's good, McCullough's great, right? He only allowed Dutton to get a second away as McCandless is going to give up more track position to get damage fixed. I just feel like you're going to need to gamble at some point to best the 80 car.
Well, you talk about gambling. I think McCandless has just gambled there, Evan, and won big time. You're in Las Vegas. He's hit the slots. He came down for the tiniest bit of damage repair. Time in the box total for that, as he is on the sim, 66, as he is in terms of what iRacing thinks he is, the #1 car. 4.1 seconds. He exited pit road just as the pace truck was coming down in towards turn #1. He will start at the tail end of the lead lap, but I think he's got all of his damage repaired, and we saw that charge from him before. This is now the charge to the end of the race.
And once upon a time, when this race was in its infancy, I said, with a long race, I'm getting my damage fixed and giving up track position. It's a bit of a different story with only 124 laps to go, but Blake obviously felt that it was necessary, even for 4 seconds of repairs, to come in that little bit extra. And it is an uphill battle, yes, but in theory, he was pretty good on speed last time. The damage going to make it that much better as he gets some repaired, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the final quarter of this Throwback Cup 400. Pace truck off and in. Cody Dutton on cruise control up front. Sees 123 laps to go.
What's more impressive launch for the race leader. Side by side, though, here comes Theodore. It's been a good scrap with Toika throughout the day, but I think Theodore on the outside should hold on to 4th position. Jaden Hopp has worked his way back up through the field as well, so great little run from the 12 car here, Evan, as we've got a number of cars, starting to come on strong in the closing stages of this race.
Well, it's go time now, right? 121 laps to go, and most races means that you're early on. But in this one, we're starting to get down to crunch time. Been racing here for almost 2 hours since the start of this one. So these restarts will be more and more consequential. Look at the 20 of Ethan McNichol. He rides in 9th behind Tim. Bad corner exit. Jaden Hopp's going to lose the spot up the road. John Theodore getting passed by Alex Crasper in a battle for P5.
This is really, really interesting. Gap between McCulloch and Dutton out front is up to half a second. And we saw a couple of restarts ago, Evan, that who was it that was struggling to make up time? I believe it was Jaden Hopp in terms of cars not really fighting side by side, but now we're seeing, for some reason, the intensity has been ratcheted up once more, and this is not going to help out someone like McCandless, who is still stuck in 13th position right now, trying to get up into the top 10.
And there is that 66 once again trying to work through traffic. Car up the road is not for position, but there he is again. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, RG, but I don't think we saw, as McCandless goes for the cross to the bottom here, I don't think we saw him run that top at any point tonight really consistently until he got the damage. So I have to think that's him adjusting to the way that car's driving now.
It might be that, but I also just think, Evan, the car looked so tight early in this race. He was pinned to the white line, trying to fend off the challenge from Dutton, who was much more able to find different lines and make them work. Maybe just a response to the aggression that we've seen from Cody Dutton in this race so far, and maybe McCandless is just trying stuff to work on. Maybe someone in our YouTube chat can pop into his Twitch chat and let us know as well, because there has been some good information coming down from that sense of things as well. But battle for second continues to intensify as Brett Hahn in the U.S. Air Force car once more applies the pressure onto the iRacing staff member, Tanner McCulloch.
McCulloch, somebody who's been in a position for much of tonight to get the maybe top 3 finish, right? He's just been on the doorstep of being a top 3 car, been top 5 for basically all of the afternoon, and just one of those drivers who has kind of been out of the headlines, which has worked well for him, right? Talked about him early when he was in a lot of the fights as we watched the battle for 8th position as McNichols under fire and Jaden Hopp trying to get back to the front of the field, or once upon a time he was the 3rd best car in the field, gets the advantage on the inside. He'll take P8 away from the 20, but I just feel like McCullough's done a good job tonight of staying out of some of the closer moments, and that's proven to be good tonight, right? Big moment with McCandless when he was leading, getting wrecked and taken out. There's just so many different drivers who have had missteps. He's been pretty much perfect.
And I mean, there's 2 ways that commentators talk about you, right, Evan? It's either you're doing a superb job or you're having a pretty rough day, like some of our cars that have been on our RaceSpotTV replays have been. But for McCulloch, it's been steady, right? And he's someone that you can't count out as caution flies once more. Looks like Sam White has had a bit of an issue in the 15 car.
He was around, but there was a couple other cars off and in the grass. I'm curious what happened. Sam White was the first car 1 lap down. So let's see how this one shakes out. Side-by-side battle between the 25 of Billy Shea, the Jordan Fruin entry on the bottom, and oh my goodness, up and over goes the 10 car after he pushed up on the 25, caught the fence, and went airborne.
Let's take one more look at this one. You can see it's slightest of contacts, and we talk about blowovers being added to the iRacing service. That is not a blowover. That is just a car going for a bit of a toss.
Yeah, what happened was he got hit on the quarter panel, and then he gets spun into the wall, and watch right here, he hits the wall right when he gets hit again. And that's what launches the side of that car up and in the air, and all 4 tires at least about 5 foot in the air. So it's Fruin who gets the worst of it. Shea only gets a tad, and Sam White, who we thought was the accident, takes a pretty good lick to the front end. Watch the 15. I'm going to be worried about him right there. Pounds the 25, and anytime I have front end damage on my car, I'm worried. So Sam White's going to come in for some damage repairs as your race leaders. On and off of pit road once more, and look at this. Ahead is Tanner McCullough, who did not change strategy, went for 4 tires, and will win the race off of pit road.
It was just being quicker on that pit lane itself. 1 second is the difference in pit road time. That is crucial, and we were just talking about the day from Tanner McCullough here. Well, Evan, now he's the main man. He's the one that will take us back to the green flag, you would have to assume. Or, as Damon Mays once more done a little bit of a strategy call here, 2 tires, I think he'll be taking us to the green flag here.
Well, he was the one earlier, I believe, who also did the 2-tire call. So he's been the only one to try that strategy this evening. And he's going to do his best to kind of force this into existence and to make this work. So we'll see if it actually does play out for him, but he has done it before. Remember, it was 15th position was the magic number I was talking about. It was 15th, and at the end of that strategy play, he found himself at 11th. This time, he was running in position number 11, so exactly where he ended, looking to pick up. And that's the kind of guy I expect to make that move. Is a mid-pack car, throw the strategy at it, try to get a top 10 out of it. Why not?
Let's see how he does this as see Richard Tam gets that wave by. Cycles back to the end of this field. Lights are out on the iRacing pace truck once more. Evan, have you been taking a bit of a caution counter here? Because you said that the over-under was at 13. I'm curious as we work lap 295 where we are in that counter.
I've lost track, but I feel like we are over magic number 13. So we'll see what happens as we enter the final quarter of this race. And talking about magic number 13, it's the 13 of Damon Mays to the green flag. Here comes Dutton already to the inside on Tanner McCullough. He wants second.
He won't get it, though. Almost contact between the two of them. Dutton has to wait to fight another day. Here comes, though, McCullough to the inside. He wants to take the race lead. And those 2 tires for that 13 now, Evan. Now we start to see just how much they will cost him.
It was never going to be a race-winning call for Damon Mays, but it's going to be a decision for him to maybe get a top 10 out of it. So we'll see how well he can hang on. His tires are pretty old. The left's pretty old compared to everybody else, and they're going to pass him basically with ease. But these two up front is who I'm interested in. There's McCandless, 9th position, working his way through traffic. He's going to need to be, I think, a little bit more aggressive and diligent than he was last time. Assuming he's done with pit service, this is his run to the end. But Tanner McCullough leading laps at North Wilkesboro, really for the first time tonight, Arjuna, under green flag conditions. Is he good enough to hold off Dutton, who's looking to the inside? The 4-car leaves it open, and just like that, the 80 car sees some daylight.
I think once more McCullough just being very smooth, very steady, does not want any damage on that car, almost factory fresh as we're about to get into those final 100 laps. This is the magic number if you ask me. No more than 2 pit stops required. What do cars do on strategy at the line? Dutton back to the race lead.
And I feel like this inside is going to work out for him. This should be his advantage. And in turns number 1 and 2, he clears. And look at the cross by the 4. Oh, he turns him. Cody Dutton gets spun by Tanner McCullough. And the gloves are off inside of 100 to go as he went for the crossover.
I think this was not really an intended dive in the way that it kind of worked out. He's just trying to carry his momentum. Dutton is very aggressive on the block, Evan. We're going to have to take one more look at this one. But I wonder if this is just a racing incident and Dutton, being a little bit too aggressive, has dropped himself back down into 7th position.
I mean, you have to know the crossover's coming, right? And Cody Dutton enters turn 3 like there's no car behind him. You can see him follow the 4-car down in relation to the 3 and the 15 behind them. The 60 car is out of line there, right? He's going lower into the corner than he would have on his own. So it's very clear that he went to block the 4. He played chicken with him and lost. It's that simple. And obviously, Dutton not happy about it. There was no intent on Tanner McCullough's part there. He didn't want to get into him, but that's now the 2 dominant cars of the night. First, Blake McCandless, now Cody Dutton, who have been spun out of the race lead.
And I'm going to choose my words carefully here because I don't want any of these drivers to come after me after this race, Evan. But in both of their cases, I think you can make the argument self-inflicted. And if either of the drivers decides to protest those incidents to the iRacing steward, Nim Cross, he's got a job on his hands, because if you ask me right now, without having, a closer look at both of them, I'm quite liable to say I wouldn't actually have any further action in either of those ones.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing, right, with official racing, is that drivers can protest things. And I don't think I've seen anything egregious enough that would require protests. I've seen quite a few boneheaded moves over the course of the last week in some high-profile races. I don't think any of those that we've seen tonight fall into that category, right? I feel like this has all been just hard racing. But I will also say, we talk about, our Monday night action here on RaceSpot with the SimSeats Real Sim Racing Cup Series. And as an administrator in that, I never envy being race control and having to review incidents. So I know the iRacing team sees a lot of stuff for the protests, I can only imagine. But I think everything tonight has been pretty on board.
Yeah, no, I think today's been pretty good. I think now we are in that final 100 laps as well here, Evan. We're working 95 to go as they cross the start-finish line and lights drop off on the pace car once more. This is going to be fun. You've got McCandless, he's in 8th. You've got Cody Dutton, he's in 12th. Tanner McCullough now finds himself in the control of this race. And I think it's fair to say, Evan, he would not have expected this at the green flag when we got underway.
In the cars behind him, right, Brett Hahn and Alex Krasper, no slouches, but not the names I would have thought to be running 2-3 inside of the last 100 laps of this race. So it's an all-new race from North Wilkesboro. Green flag in the air, 94 laps to go for Tanner McCullough.
See Damon Mays on those 2 tires trying to get on past Jaden Hobbs, but he's going to struggle to try and make things happen with those left sides being so worn. He's now going to get stuck down on the inside as John Theodore will try and get the over-under, I'd have to assume. At the front, though, Evan, it's a half a second gap between first and second.
And that 13 Machinima is again trying to rock the two-tire strategy and doing a pretty good job. Just don't think he's going to hold off the likes of the 7 of Theodore and the 66 machine of McCandless, who will slide on through on the bottom. But again, you'll notice, and I want to note, you know, the numbers on the scoring pylon don't necessarily always match the numbers on the cars, but to explain the ranking, the numbers in this race are ranked based on iRating, right? So this is the top split of 3 races, which means that these are the top cars. So the highest driver in here, iRating-wise, going to be number 1. That's Blake McCandless. The lowest iRating driver in this race is Billy Shea, number 25. So maybe confusing at times, but I like to think of it as an extra stat. Look at the number, and you can kind of figure out where iRacing thinks, based on their iRating, they rank in this race. So good to see some of the high numbers up front.
And I know the NASCAR community, Evan, does like their custom numbers, and I think there's a lot of identity that gets behind, you know, your choice of numbers as well. But it does sometimes get confusing if everyone was their own custom number, for example. Imagine if we had 366s in the race today. That would be very, very confusing. Fortunately, it's not such an issue, and like you say, the stat is always nice. Talking about iRating statistics, I always like to say they're somewhat useless. McCandless with 6,790. He's got the most iRating in our session today. The lowest, Billy Shea in the 25 car, 2,329. So a nice little swing of, you know, big to small names, excuse me. And it's always nice in these broadcasts that we don't always have to focus in on the biggest names in sim racing. We get to see new ones. Because the reality is, over the course of the next couple of years, drivers develop, they find speed, they find more speed than they thought they had within themselves, and there's all the chance in the world that they'll be up on a World Championship broadcast in the next couple of years as well.
That's the objective for all of these names, right? The likes of McCandless and others who are competing in that Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, and that applies to all of these top guys, right? The McCulloughs, the Theodores, the guys that stream. Ultimately, I think, want to take those next steps in the official ladder. So fun to watch these guys progress through their careers. There's Cody Dutton, spun from the race lead. He is up now to position number 6, and most importantly, in the process, leapfrogging Blake McCandless, right? Thought maybe if McCandless was going to have speed to challenge for the win in this one, that Dutton dropping to back closer to him may have been his best opportunity to get to him. But it appears that the 80 is still the better of those 2 cars. And in turn, I think you got to look at Cody Dutton as the biggest threat coming through the field, as he'll go to the inside on hop and take away P4.
Question now becomes as well, how long does it take him to get past Alex Crasper and Brett Hahn in 2nd and 3rd, and then we'll see the rivalry with Tanner McCulloch kick off once more. I'm not sure, Evan, if you've been following along with the driver radios, because of course I'm hitting the buttons for this broadcast as well, so I don't get that little bit of info that the drivers are maybe communicating in and amongst each other. I'm not sure if Dutton felt a little bit aggrieved about that one, or if there was a very gentlemanly discussion about it and both drivers agreed, well, racing incidents happen, and as Dutton gets back up into 3rd, let's live to fight another day.
He didn't say a lot, but from what I heard, he wasn't happy as a yellow just before he can look to the inside. And we'll look to find the cause of that one. Was it Abramitis?
I believe it was. It's side by side with the 15 of Sam White coming down into turn 1, and oh, it's going to be the slightest of contacts from behind. We'll have to grab the aerial look at this one, Evan, but it's just close, hard racing, and these guys who are on the edge of the lead lap, Abramitis somehow managed to get that back up to racing speed before the pace car put him 1 lap down.
Yeah, just a tough break. I mean, racing incident, you got a car looking to the bottom. I think it goes back to the point I made with McCandless. If I'm the leader, I'm not getting that close to a lap car. And in this case, if I'm lapped cars, I don't think we really need to be racing each other that tight. And a bit of frustration by some of the lead lap cars that many of the yellows have been caused by lap down cars. But everybody's on pit road. Tanner McCullough is going to maintain. He goes for the 4-tire stop. Second off of pit road goes to Brett Hahn. Third to Cody Dutton. Cody Dutton within striking distance as we close in on the home stretch.
And this is now the penultimate time we expect these cars down on the lane, Evan. Yes, one more stop, and that will be the money stop. The only complication now becomes, if we get a few more cautions, how important are tires? How many sets do these teams have left? There was a reason why I asked you about that caution count just a few laps ago, Evan. I'm very, very curious how many of these cars, someone like Blake McCandless, who obviously had to come down and get damage repaired on 3 or 4 separate occasions, how many sets of tires does he have compared to someone like Tanner McCullough?
And based on my rough numbers, I feel like there's... And just as I started talking, Blake McCandless started talking about tires. So I was trying to listen in to see what the conversation was about, but not giving us too many details, at least in the driver chat. But drivers are discussing it back and forth where we sit strategy-wise and whatnot. I feel like they have to have a few sets left. So I don't think it will be a determinative factor in this race. These guys have been pretty disciplined to this point on not taking tires on a 5-lap run, not taking tires on a 10-lap run. They could probably come down 2 more times and be safe. But the big question is, you know, with only 15 cars on the lead lap, what happens if you take your final set at 50 to go, right? If we get a yellow at 25 to go, normally 25-lap run, I'm not taking tires. Final 25 laps of the race, maybe I am. And maybe that's where somebody who saves just 1 extra set could be a difference maker, as we'll see McCullough lead us back to green ahead of Hahn and Dutton.
Once more, Evan, I think Cody Dutton might have tried to jump the start just a little bit too early, and that has not helped him get the best run. Instead, it's Brett Hahn looking to the inside of Tanner McCullough as we've got to fight for the race lead.
And it is on the inside. Brett Hahn trying to make a pass on Tanner McCullough. He's been second fiddle to the 4 car for much of this night. Can he get that U.S. Air Force car up one more spot? No, here comes Dutton flying to the inside in 3 and 4, and Cody Dutton is back to second.
He's been the strongest car for so long, already has to go defensive from Hahn.
Oh, but he takes him out!
Is that
Cody Dutton with retribution and absolutely drives through the 4 car.
I was going to ask the question, Evan, is that retaliation? Because I've got an opinion on this. It has no place in any form of racing, and quite frankly, if I'm Team Utoika, I am feeling very, very aggrieved right now.
Well, I know we talked about the contact before, right? And me saying that everything was kind of on the line tonight and above board, and pretty Bush League stuff by Cody Dutton that's not needed in top split special event stuff. And, you know, you're going to feel bad when you get hit, right? I mean, there's no doubt that in the previous incident, Tanner McCullough drove through him. But it was a lot more nuanced, right? A crossover to the inside, a little bit of a touch, and I think 2 cars wrecking on a block is much different than you driving through the field for the sole intent of wrecking somebody. And I think Cody Dutton's going to enjoy a week or 2 off of the sim, because you can't have that.
Him is going to have something to take a look at. I just think at the end of the day, Evan, I mean, we were looking at a spectacular run to the end now, and I mean, he soured what might, if he wins today and comes into the interview booth, there's going to be one question at the front of our minds. It's not the way that you want to win a race. He clearly had one of the fastest cars. And you know what? To put the insult to injury, he's just punted an iRacing staff member as well.
If there's one person you don't wreck, it's a staff. I mean, you shouldn't do that to anybody, right? But it's, there's no doubt that Cody Dutton's extremely talented, and it's unfortunate when it's the talented drivers that kind of drive beyond what you would expect on the track, right? I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. But there's just no need, right? You're mad at the guy for dumping you, beat him by 10 seconds.
Yes.
You're mad at a guy wrecking you, give him a little bit of a door rub on the way through, right? Move him up the hill and drive on by. I just don't think there's any justification for wrecking somebody, and that's the unfortunate part where there's no physical way, right, for iRacing to live add him in every official racing. And I think that what has made iRacing so popular is the fact that you can protest, right? There's a lot of other sims or more arcade-style games out there where people intentionally wrecking people is to be expected, right? And it's kind of the status quo, if you will, and people get away with it. You can't get away with it as much on the sim because it's very easy to protest somebody. It just won't be right, though, if Cody Dutton wins the race, whereas if this was a private event, he probably would have been parked.
It is what it is, and now it's just focusing on what we have in front of us, right, Evan? Because we talked earlier about if you make a mistake, sometimes it gets into your mental state of mind. Same thing applies in a situation like this. If he's now being told, look, you just hit an iRacing staff member, watch out for the rest of this race, it might be playing a factor as well. The contact is what it is. McCulloch is now back in 8th. Opportunity for him to bounce back up through the field. But now we've got, about 65 laps or so. Can Dutton really put on a show and put something else in the front of our minds?
And as the green flag flies, how worried are you if you're Brett Hahn, right? You had to know that the 80 had some history that led up to that contact there in the battle for second. So you may not be that worried that the 80 car is going to drive through, but if I'm the 3, now what? If I throw the block, he's going to wreck me, right? I mean, you have to know that the driver behind you is a little bit short-tempered, and too bad for Brett Hahn. Get a real good shot to win this race. I still feel like Dutton is the best car on track. My definition of best is different than it was about 20 laps ago, but how about Jaden Hopp back to P3, right? I mean, he had dropped back and struggled in the mid-pack after missing out on a pit strategy a little bit earlier. He is all of a sudden in a prime position for a top 3.
And I got a bit of an update from our YouTube chat on that, Evan. It sounds as though just a couple of cars trying to get down onto pit road have been cut off by some of the lapped cars. So maybe that's what we saw for Teemu Toika earlier on as well, because we have seen a number of cars maybe stay out then come down the next lap when we expected them to come down onto pit road the first time around. So wondering if there's just a little bit of gamesmanship going on right now. But like you say, opportunity for someone like Jaden Hopp, Brett Hahn to make something happen here. I think Brett Shea has just had a bit of a spin. We stay under green flag conditions.
A lot has happened over the course of 400 laps here at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Here's the replay just a moment ago. The number 25 on the bumper, looping it around, and fortunately no yellow for Billy Shea on his own off of corner number 4. This is the battle for the race lead. Brett Hahn leading Cody Dutton. They pulled away by about a second over third on back, so a two-way fight for the race win at the moment.
McCandless, by the way, is charging up through the field. He's one of the few cars, Evan, that came down onto pit road the last time around. And while we see Cody Dutton applying a lot of pressure to that U.S. Air Force machine in front, McCandless has just gone and passed Damon Mays up into 9th position. Would not be surprised if we see McCandless, McCulloch, and Cody Dutton once more at the front of this field with still 61 laps to go.
And a lot can happen in those 61 laps, right? A lot has happened in 341 to this point. A lot can happen in the 59 laps still to go, but very much that sense of urgency is there. You're looking off of the bumper of race leader Brett Hahn back to Cody Dutton, who is all over that bumper off of 4.
I wonder if a little bit of a shove off the corner as well. Slightly better is Dutton through turns 3 and 4 right now, but through 1 and 2, Hahn able to hold on. Once more, Dutton looks to the inside, forces his nose, and he's back to the race lead, Evan.
And again, it's the inside in 3 and 4. And the 3 car saw a car coming to the bottom. Guess what it didn't do? Didn't block him. And that's how you don't end up in the fence. The 3 car lets the 80 car, Cody Dutton, go through. And now the 3 needs to try his best to stay with Dutton, right? I feel like Dutton's going to pull away here, but if the 3 car can just stay close, maybe the car can come to him on the long run. If we look at the trends, to put my Larry McReynolds hat on, this race is very unlikely to go the 56 laps to the end of this race. So if I'm the 3, I'm going to do everything I can to hold off a charging Jaden Hopp. Even Alex Casper in 4th, quickly arriving on the scene as well. I need to maintain P2 as long as I can. So if we get a yellow and another restart, I've got prime position to challenge the 8. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it, though. Here comes the 12.
Yeah, I think Hahn is just struggling a bit too much. It's been decent pace on the short runs, not so good on the mid to long run. On the outside, though, with lap traffic going to be a factor as we work our way through turn 1 and 2. Casper and Theodore right behind to take advantage, Evan, if anything happens here.
And lap traffic's going to go to the very outside, so that's going to put Hahn 3 wide in 3 and 4. Great driving up top by Billy Shea to back out of that one so the leaders could go all the way to the fence on corner exit, and Jaden Hopp makes the pass for 2nd. Now it's Casper, followed by Theodore. I think that 3 car is to sit and duck, and it's going to be a shame because Hahn so good for so long tonight, but getting eaten alive out there right now.
Yeah, like I said, the medium to long run is just not on the side of the U.S. Air Force machine. Interesting, though, here, Evan, now that Cody Dutton and Jaden Hopp have cleared some of this lap traffic, gap between Hopp and Dutton has not extended like I thought it might. So Jaden Hopp finds himself in 2nd position now, clean air behind, and the race leader to work on right now.
And what this battle for 3rd is doing is it's allowing Hopp and Dutton to pull away. Jaden Hopp may still have a chance to win this race as we see that 5 of Casper still trying to break through and finally will take 3rd away from the 3. But a little bit of impatience there. I talked about Hahn playing it smart, not throwing blocks, but very aggressively trying to stay on the outside of the 5 car. Knows that if he loses 1 spot, he may lose 4 here, right? Toyka and McCullough have arrived on the scene, so if the 3 can't figure it out, he could fall all the way down to 7th, if not worse, as finally Casper gets on through, and now it's Theodore looking to the inside.
Oh, Toyka almost loses the rear end, just a bit too much speed on entry, holds onto it, will slip back into 7th. But wow, this is some incredible racing, Evan. We've got 50 laps to go here, and it's anyone's game. McCulloch is now up into 6th. McCandless right on the tail end of this group as well. Cody Dutton has not run away like we expected, and this will be a very exciting final 8th of this race.
And you got to give credit to Hahn, right? He's working real hard, doing everything he can to the top side, but it's just slanted against him right now. That 7 of Theodore's through. He'll take over 4th. Now it's Tanner McCullough to P6, and you see some damage on the 3. Why not 3 wide? As, oh, to the outside, gonna run out of room and a spinner. McCullough's involved with McCandless and Toyka, and there's your caution. 47 laps to go, 3 wide, gone awry.
And Toyka got mixed up in that one through no fault of his own. Let's take a look at the RaceSpotTV replay here, and it was just 2 of your main contenders for the race, Evan, getting together, squeezing one another all the way into the wall. Let's jump on board with Toyka. This will be a great onboard to take a look at.
You're going to watch the 4 of McCullough. He clears the 3, but I don't think he either A, knew McCandless was there, or B, thought he would be clear on the 6. And as he slides across the nose of the 3 car, he drives right in front of Blake McCandless. And they may have just rode down the fence, but watch the opening in the fence right there, right? The access to the backstretch and to get cars out of the racetrack. That opening in the wall is right where the 4 car got turned, and that's why he bounced back out so violently, collecting, of course, McCandless and the innocent victim there in Toyka, who ended up into the inside K-rail.
Race off of pit road. No major contenders for Cody Dutton as he will win that one. Looks like 2 tires might have been taken in his stop as well. And this is that final stop, Evan. The final stop in terms of fuel. The drivers might still decide to come down for tires. So that would be an interesting call. And My oh my, I'm very, very much intrigued now as to the race situation once the pit stop cycles all, cycle all out.
And McNichol goes for 2 tires. I think everybody else is on 4. So Dutton going to lead off of pit road, followed by Crasper. Brett Hahn may really enjoy this as an opportunity to salvage his night. And you'll notice at the front of the field, well, you want to talk about a Hail Mary. Blake McCandless was just involved in an incident. Doesn't need fuel to go to the end of the race. And feels like getting tires will only lock him into the mid-pack. So this is the throw it at the wall and see if it sticks strategy for Blake McCandless, who will stay out and reassume the race lead. It feels like years ago when McCandless was the dominant car in this race. It has had so many ups and downs over the course of this one, and just don't feel like that car's got any way to hang on. Both incidents that he's been involved in tonight have been pretty hard impacts.
First one maybe more his fault. Second one questionable at best in terms of the blame responsibility, incident responsibility, as it were. But what a shame, Evan. It was looking like 3 cars. Any one of them could have this one on pace. McCulloch, Dutton, and McCandless, and now it's just Cody Dutton that's left as the last man standing. Alex Crasper, Ethan McNeil, they'll be the 2 cars trying to hunt him down. And once more, we kind of reset our race situation with only Blake McCandless staying out on track.
And I don't think it's going to be long-lived for him, so expect Dutton to go for a quick pass here, and I think McNichol's going to be enough of a buffer that 80 machine is going to be able to go back to the top of the board. A green flag flies, 42 laps to go in the 2021 iRacing North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup. McCandless leads into the corner, but there goes Dutton on the inside for the race lead.
Making it look very, very easy. I don't think McCandless is going to fight this one too hard, Evan. It's about the track position game. He's wondering about future cautions coming out as Crasper tries to go down his inside.
And the 5 car way on the bottom. It's a rocky road as he nearly put the left side tires off it in the grass, but Crasper will get the spot, move him to a race best P2. How about that all-pro number 5 Chevy making moves late in this one? Up to second. Hahn gets third, and McCandless will continue to fall back.
Yeah, he's just going to hemorrhage positions for the moment as he tries to rip the outside, and whatever tires that he's still got underneath him scream out in agony. Down to 6th, and the two-tire car, that was starting very high up the field is also down in this early portion of the stint, Evan, and blocking the track right now as you see Damon Mays and John Theodore nowhere for them to go.
They just have limited options right now, right? And a caution flag gonna save us because I think that group was gonna get ugly pretty quickly. It is Jacob Blankenship around in the Monster Energy Thunderbird.
See what happens here. Solo car once more down in through turn 1. Blankenship, who has recovered back onto the lead lap as well, just lights up the rear tires, and Richard Tam fortunate that he doesn't slide back up into him, but you don't want these late race cautions now, Evan, because while you said those guys were kicking up and ratcheting up the intensity, well, now this just ratchets it up even further, if you ask me. The tension is now in the air where the stop and start and the opportunities for drivers to get better restarts than one another just opens the door for some very desperate moves down into turn 1.
Every restart, you're right, is one more opportunity for a big dive bomb or a bump and run or insert whatever move you want to put on somebody here, driving through a quarter panel, whatever, right? Every restart makes that more likely. It's short track racing at the end of the day. I don't think that our consensus, Arjuna, has been that these guys can't touch each other, right? You can hit someone in the door, you can get somebody in the bumper. You just have to walk that line. And I think that if you're Dutton, you have to expect that Brett Hahn might give you a little bit of something. And it might not just be for the race lead, right? I mean, Alex Crasper, to his credit, hasn't been in the spotlight much tonight. Started 9th, had kind of been right at the tip or just outside of the top 5 for most of it. He looked great on that last run. I think he may be a shoo-in for second here. I think he had more pace than Hahn did on that last run. You got Jaden Hopp, who was a contender early, backing into the conversation, and just think there's so much left to be decided, and this is where, at 35 laps to go, where this thing can get messy.
It's been slightly messy. I was trying to say, are you trying to imply that it's not been messy so far today? I will say, I mean, in the case of Dutton, you get raced how you race others. He's made it clear that he's willing to put the bumper to other drivers, even if we're not at the final couple of miles of the race. If you're Brett Hahn, you're Alex Crasper, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't think about it. This is an opportunity. This is a one-off as well. Remember, Evan, I mentioned it slightly earlier. The other ovals that we'll cover on this special event calendar, they're tied in to the NIS schedule, that year-long competition that follows the NASCAR Cup Series over the course of the 2021 season as well. This is a one-off, and in a car that doesn't even have an open setup competition on the official iRacing service, is encouraging drivers to jump in, have some fun, mess around with different things, and see what result you can get. I think it does change the complexion of how you approach these final few laps. We're approaching the final 30 laps of this race.
And that's the consensus, by the way. These drivers were sharing under the yellow flag. All of them having a real fun time in this race and hoping that we see more events like this in the future. Hats off to iRacing for doing some full-length racing with these 87 cars. Green flag flies, so we're back underway. Could it be the run to the end? 33 laps to go. Cody Dutton in control.
Have to go all the way back to Damon Mays, who'll slip down the inside of that 20 car. That did take 2 tires the last time around. Oh, they rubbed doors, Evan. Oh, and I think the intensity that you were talking about, it's just going to keep heating up.
Side-by-side battle to the inside. The number 87 machine. Was there a touch that time? Way up the hill, and now a spin behind. And a caution. John Theodore and Tanner McCullough. When it rains, it pours. For the 14.
What do they say, Evan? Cautions breed cautions, and oh, that's a slightly unsavory one for McCullough, who, no fault of his own for the earlier spin that drops him through the pack. I think this one, though, just a little bit too deep under brakes, and that contact with the car that Theodore, by the way, Evan, had been having a very good run until slightly earlier, qualified back in 15th, was running up in 4th position at one point as well.
It seems like a lot of drivers not happy with Tanner McCullough tonight. John Theodore obviously not happy with getting run over. And so he expressed his concern over the radio with Tanner McCullough, and who would you guess chimed in? Cody Dutton, first one on the radio, not happy with Tanner McCullough. Not sure that there's a lot of moral high ground there, but you're just not happy with it, and I think that's a bit of Tanner overdriving the car, if we're being honest. I think he's frustrated with how this race has played out. Had a really good chance to win this thing, and finds himself outside of the top 10 and in traffic late. I think that was just a bit of overdriving there over his head. Oh,
for sure, and talk about digging your grave even deeper in the case of Cody Dutton. I mean, maybe some notes will be passed down across from McCullough's desk to the virtual Nim Cross's desk as well, since I do believe iRacing is all still virtual. I will say, I had mentioned it about halfway through, McCullough had been exceptionally steady. And I say exceptionally steady in an unnoticeable way in many ways, right, Evan? He's someone who was either in first, either in second, or either in third. It didn't matter which position he was. He was in and around at the front, not really getting mixed up with too many aggressive fights at any point in time. He's been involved in 2 flashpoints. One of them, 3 flashpoints if we go back all the way to the initial incident between him and Dutton as well. The first one, a racing incident. I think I can be pretty clear on that one in terms of an aggressive block and an aggressive move as well. Blame on either side. The second one, an intentional dumping. No, nothing that McCullough can do. The third one, I just wonder if late in the race, cautions breed cautions, Evan. Just a slight mistake, and we'll get back to racing with 25 to go. I just hope we don't get a few of those as well in these closing stages, because that might really interrupt what was looking to be a quite exciting sprint to the end of this race.
Yeah, the stop and start can definitely hurt the momentum of the end of the race, and I think that this has been a good one that we've seen a lot of different storylines evolve through. This race is going to end at about 2 hours and 45 minutes, I think, of time, which isn't that bad for 400 laps, but For a long one, it's certainly been entertaining. There's never been any shortage of stuff to talk about, and I think this one deserves an exciting run to the checkered flag. This time, it'll come with 26 laps to go. Dutton, Hahn, Krasper, Hoppe, and Snipes, your top 5. Seems all but guaranteed, unless there's a misstep, that Cody Dutton sits in the catbird seat.
I think the question as well, what does Hahn do on this restart? Very early jump for Dutton as we cross the start-finish line then, Evan. Going to be a very exciting sprint to the end.
And he gets the jump, which is key. He's way out in front by half a second over Hahn, so this fight for second may end up being the most pressing issue.
It might be, but never say never. I mean, Dutton's car has really launched off in the early stages, but you never know what Hahn and Krasper have behind them. The gap is not extended in the way that it maybe has before, and they're staying single file. That's going to be crucial here, Evan. They can't squabble over second and third. They've got to focus in on closing the gap to the race leader and trying to fight for the victory.
And they're doing a good job of not allowing Dutton to pull further away, but they're not gaining on him, right? He got immediately out to about a half a second advantage in the run to one off of the restart, and that's basically where that gap has set at since. As you can see, the differences from fourth to third, third to fourth, and so on and so forth, the differences in the intervals between positions.
Yeah, it's a close one, but it is coming down. 4/10 between Hahn and Dutton. This time, slight mistake, I think, for the race leader. As we come across the start-finish line, he's managed to regain it, but it's just going to ebb and flow here. As the car bounces around the track, as the drivers just adapt to the changing nature. You see Dutton goes high through 1 and 2. Hahn much more content to run that slightly lower line, and that's what's helping him close in the gap through turns 1 and 2.
Oh, and a spinner on the back, and again, the 4 car of Tanner McCullough. This time, no caution. And we talked about the over-driving for McCullough, who got a little bit too hot into turn number 1 on the last incident. And this time, I think the angle might have been a little bit tricky. I thought the 4 car came up into the 19.
I think a little bit of one, half a dozen of the other. It's just 2 doesn't go into 1. And I think in this case, Evan, that was also a fight for position at the end of the lead lap. So I wonder if just pride and bragging rights maybe on the line there. Back to live pictures. This is third, and look at Jaden Hopp right on the tail end right now of Alex Krasper for the third and final podium position.
And Krasper's leaving the inside open, and I wonder if Jaden Hopp, how aggressive he is going to be to send it in there. This time by only 18 more trips around for the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway. You can't afford to be that patient anymore.
No, you really cannot. This is now the go time. This is when Daniel Ricciardo would approve licking the stamp and extending it just a little bit further. Dutton is clear by half a second still, Evan. I have a feeling that if he can hold on to this car, not make any mistakes, he's got one hand on the checkered flag.
And traffic has been an issue so much tonight. And that mid-pack, that ultra-competitive mid-pack has spread out a little bit with all of the incidents that have happened at about the last 100 laps or so. So the positive for Dutton about these late yellows is the runs to the end will be short enough that he will not have to deal with thick traffic like you're seeing on screen now, the battle for 5th, where under fire is Team Utoika.
Number of cars that have been through the wars up and down through the field. Toika and Theodore have had spins on during today's action, but Theodore clears Philip Snipes, who at one point running up in the top 3. Just gives you an indication of how various cars have moved in terms of their relative performance. The one driver, of course, who's been oh so dominant on the day has been Cody Dutton. No qualifying time, Evan. I wonder if a lot more focus spent on the race setup.
Well, that's the key, right? We talked about that miraculous run through the field, the lack of qualifying altogether. So the number 1 provisional position gave him 20th spot on the grid, the ability to drive through. He's been so good. And I think that's been a big storyline, right? Not to be overshadowed by some of the controversy, as Cody Dutton probably was the fastest car in this race outright. And took away after Blake McCandless dominated early. We saw some other drivers enter the fray, but it always seemed like Dutton had the answer when all was even on strategy, and would not be shocked at all if he ends up as the driver in victory lane here. Just hoping, if you're him, that you don't get another yellow, right? You don't need another excuse for somebody else to have a chance to take a look at you, to take a run at you, and, one less restart, I think, is better, because you don't want to leave things open. And I mentioned that those cars behind were keeping things pretty even at about a half a second, but he's starting to open this up.
I wonder as well if, caution just has to fly, Evan, any point after, I think it's 5 to go, and that would end the race as well. So it's all about the timing of the caution. Might save him 5 laps of stress in terms of leading this race. Battle for the podium, though. You see the gap between first and second extends up to 1 second. I have a feeling Jaden Hott might not just be staring down third position here. It might also be second, as Brett Hahn, a car that's always tailed off, and as the runs go on, and speaking of cautions, Trey Bannon brings out another one.
Well, that time I did say it, and it happened. So unfortunate timing for Cody Dutton, but we can buckle up, because we're going to have a restart with less than 5 laps to go, and we'll take a look at what happened. The look to the inside for the 17 machine, and then from behind just a touch. I feel like that 17 really didn't know what he wanted to do into the corner. Looked like he was going to commit to the bottom, Argenia. Then it looked like he changed his mind and wanted to tuck in line, and I think it was just the 17's unpredictability causing the 13 machine to kind of drive through him there.
Yeah, very much so. Unpredictability, and just, the amount of contact that was made between them. You could almost fit a piece of paper there. It was so light, but the results very, very quick and very, very deadly. Now we've got one final caution on the day. It will be now, Evan, a sprint to the end, and I think it will be a 2 or 3 lap shootout. So there was a move for position, as I think second position, Brett Hahn, has come down onto pit road. Very interesting call there. I'm not sure why he's come down onto pit lane. He cycles himself back out into 12th now.
Well, I said late in this race that there may be somebody with an extra set of tires who wants to risk it all to go for the win, and I think that's the call here for Brett Hahn. Do I think it works? No. Plainly put, I don't think if he had 20 laps to go, absolutely. 5 laps to go. Don't think he's got enough to get through, but I think this is a move that happens because this is a one-off event, right? The point that I touched on earlier, we've talked about it a couple of times tonight, that your mentality is different when you're not running season points. You're not happy with second. I don't think Brett Hahn, unless he sent it into Dutton, was going to win the race. And it was a late race restart, so maybe you put the bumper to him, right? The opportunity was there, but I feel like Hahn felt like staying there was only going to give him second at best. And now you wonder, can Alex Crasper do something different? It's the highest the 5 car has been all night, and all of a sudden he's on the doorstep of a race win.
And take a look at the movers and shakers, Evan, in that top 10. You've got McCandless, who's recovered fairly well from 2 rather large contacts to be back up into 8th, but other than him, it's only people moving up. It's been a day of attrition for some of our strongest cars. Up 19 on the day, Cody Dutton has to fend off the challenge from Crasper behind. Like you say, highest that Crasper has been, but will cross the line to make it 5 to go this time. Question is, lights off on the pace truck or not? Indeed they are. So we'll have 4 laps to go, and I do think that means for Crasper, even more intensity, even more urgency in trying to get the move done here, Evan.
And they will go back to the outside line for what could be the final restart of this race. This time through, 396 laps complete, 4 laps to go for the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway. The pace car down and in. It's Cody Dutton, who started way back in 20th, who takes 4 laps to go. Look at the fight for third, though, as Jaden Hott puts a block on Team Utoika.
Once more, some interesting jumps there as cars try to get the best launch they can to try and make positions. Gap between Dutton and Crasper is up to 0.7 of a second, so I think the race lead is done and dusted. Contact further back. We might get another caution to finish this race off, Evan.
And there it is. Caution flag flies. The spin from Christopher Allen. We'll re-rack him and restack him, and what a sour end to the night hadn't talked much about Christopher R. Jr. in this race, had driven up to 7th, and that was Brett Hahn trying to maximize the fresh tires, who overdrove it and just kind of went right through him.
I was slightly worried when we were talking about fresh tires, thinking that might happen. But wow, what a day it's been, Evan. And I didn't really realize, I'm going to be honest, that we had green-white checkers in this race.
And that's what drivers are discussing, because I believe 1987 rules would imply that we don't have overtime, right? But this race will be extended for a green-white-checkered finish, and they will have 3 attempts to finish this one. So a little bit more racing in case 400 laps wasn't enough of a fix for you. I don't think this will take many of those overtime attempts, but you never know, and each opportunity is one more chance for Alex Krasper to do better than he did on that last restart, because if Cody Dutton can replicate that, it's going to be a walk in the park.
So, yes, I'm glad I was confused, Evan. I wasn't wrong. I did my research correctly coming into this one. Just a slight mix-up. Sounds like we'll have at least one of these green-white checkers. I'll be honest, though, Evan. You said we might not expect all of them. We might need all of them. If Krasper can get a good launch here...
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, that's for sure. But if Krasper can get a good launch here, he's got to go for it. He's got 3 extra opportunities handed to him on a silver platter here. For Cody Dutton, 3 opportunities to get the victory taken away from him. Completely different complexion to this race than I thought we'd be dealing with. At least one more lap under caution here. I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say Cody Dutton wins this race. Maybe not so bold after all.
Well, if you called that on the grid, it would have been a hot take, right? I mean, Cody Dutton, the 8th highest I-rated driver in here, starting from 20th, didn't really put down a time in practice, so we didn't know what he was going to have, but it became quite clear very early on that that thing was a rocket ship, and been quite the adventure. To the front, to the back, back to the front, and everything in between. Got an opportunity to win the first iRacing special event at the North Wilkesboro Speedway. Looking for the lights to go out on top of the pace car next time by. Blake McCandless joking, hey guys, let's do it again. The 3 a.m. split up next. So again, if you are enjoying the action on track and want to get in on it, there's a couple more opportunities to race in this event over the course of the weekend. Just go into your iRacing official oval racing and select the North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup and get out there and have some fun.
A lot of fun, and as well, I mean, you don't get too many opportunities for full-length races. We will get couple of the NAS ones that we've mentioned before. The Coke 600 coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. We've got Darlington as well, and then that season finale at Phoenix. But no, not really any other opportunities to break out this 87 Cup car. So spend your weekend, have a little bit of fun, because every day is race day on the iRacing service.
And it's go time. Pace truck down and in. Green, white, checkered. 2 laps to go.
No challenge from Krasper to Dutton. It's the battle for second between Hopp and Krasper. What can that 12 car do down on the inside then, Evan?
Looked good in the center, but didn't get the run off. So Krasper defends P2. Going to be a 3-way fight for second. Dutton gets the white flag.
What a race it's been for Cody Dutton. Controversy to say the very least, Evan, but he's been one of the strongest cars on the day. Very much deserves this upcoming victory.
You can have a lot of opinions about it, but one thing that's fact is the 80 car was the best in the field tonight, and Cody Dutton, top split winner of the North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup. He's going to celebrate and burn it down on the front straightaway. Cody Dutton. Trials and tribulations, drove through the field not once but twice. He was the best car all night long. And Cody Dutton takes home the checkered flag and wins the top split for night 1 of the North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup, an iRacing special event. Plenty more racing to come this weekend, like we just mentioned. If you want to get in on the action with iRacing, every day is race day. You can go to iRacing.com for more information. And if you're already on the service, plenty more racing from the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway over the course of this weekend. Let's take a look at your RaceSpotTV full race results and quick peek to the bottom. Fastest lap of the night, Cody Dutton late in that charge to the front. He gets the win by 0.6 of a second over Alex Crasper in second. Jaden Hopp, good enough for fourth. That was his best on the night. How about Timu Toika, late pickup to P4 with Damon Mays coming home in position number 5. John Theodore sneaks in for a 6th spot, and Brett Hahn sliding late down to 7th, ahead of Philip Snipes at 8th position, Ethan McNichol in 9th, and Trey Brennan rounds out your top 10. Blake McCandless started on pole, led laps early, but it falls apart in the second half, and he finishes at 11th position ahead of Jacob Blankenship, who comes home 12th. Joe Yakes ends up in 13th position to Christopher Allen in 14th, and Richard Tam finishes 15th position. The final driver on the lead lap, 16th spot, is Sam White. Tanner McCullough, first car a lap down. Both he and Billy Shea finished 4 laps down in 17th and 18th spot. The rest of these drivers, for the most part, were on the hook at the end of the night. It'll include Tom Abramitis in 19th and Jordan Fruin in 20th, along with Trevor McManus, Sean Kimball, Michael Dix, Devin Fontaine, and Charles Wimbley, 25th position. That is a look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV full race results. I love the Pontiac balloon on the back straightaway here at the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway. It was the Fords and Chevys Arjuna that put on a show this afternoon.
It was great, Evan. I mean, break out the classic 87 Cup car. Something you can only do on the iRacing service thanks to their tireless dedication over the past 12 months. And boy, we had some fun. 3 or 4 more opportunities for drivers to do the same on the weekend. 400 laps is a physical challenge. I'm not sure how many of these drivers are so much looking forward to doing it all over again, but at the very end, Cody Dutton, in dramatic fashion, takes victory. The question is, what does Nim Cross have to say about it?
And controversy late in this one. Dutton gets the win after a bump and run, or a dump and run, if you will. Late contact with Tanner McCullough. Blake McCandless was involved in incidents as the race leader. A lot happened, and we're happy that you spent your time with us here on RaceSpotTV. Encourage you, if you want to stay up to date with all things, and follow us for more sim racing action. Make sure you're staying up to date with RaceSpot on all your favorite social platforms, of course, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and for live sim racing action on YouTube and Twitch. For the entire RaceSpotTV team, for our Junior Kankipati and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Cody Dutton, your inaugural winner of the North Wilkesboro Throwback Cup. We will see you next time on RaceSpotTV.